Nigeria. He was not talking to Yoruba people as a whole. He wasn't talking to Nigerians as a whole. He was talking to APC in Ogun State. And by that, he was also talking to APC generally. It was an intra-party conversation. Listen, I have served you guys. I have helped the president. I even gave him a vice president. I was supposed to be his president, but I said, no, I don't want to be vice president. I was supposed to be his vice president, but I nominated somebody else to be his vice president. By the way, you guys, I nominated your son, who is JIJO. I've done all of that for everybody. Now I want to do something for myself. Emilokan. He was talking to them in the party. There has to be somebody of Igbo stock who is able to speak to PDP and says, we are the next people in the line of whatever we're doing in this party. If you don't have the audacity or the cojones to, what do they say that thing in Spanish? If you don't have that gumption to speak like that in PDP, you have no right to talk to Nigerians about having the presidency. This is the truth of the matter. And we have to tell ourselves the truth. You have invested a lot in PDP, and PDP owes you a lot. And I'm saying this as I don't belong to any party, but if you look at the trajectory of party politics, of course, until Abga stepped in, when it came to state elections, Abga usually would win. But when it comes to national elections, most of the time it was PDP. So there has to be somebody who is bold enough, who is able to say, you know what, I am from the East. We have voted for you guys since 1999. We demand. And you can make that demand. That was what ITESIWAJU did. And if you don't understand that, you're shouting, Emilokan is a problem. And I've seen Yoruba people also say things like, why would they say Emilokan? Why would they say Yoruba Lokan? I'm like, do you even understand the context of that statement? He was talking to his party members. They were about to have primary elections. There were no primaries at that time. They had not conducted the primaries at that time. He was having a primary elections where the person that he nominated to be vice president to Buhari was also running to be president, right? So himself, Amechi, Yemi Osinbajo, you know, even Emefiele, I don't know where he got 100 million, but I mean, we know now because now has, I mean, think about the federal government is, the courts are actually, what's that word they use when they collect money from you? Confiscating over 2 trillion naira from a man. Wait, where would people spend this money? Are they going to spend it in hell? Anyway, Emefiele got his 100 million and bought tickets. So Emefiele ran, Yemi Osinbajo ran, Rotimi Amechi ran, ITESIWAJU Tinubu also ran. Many people ran. And so you are telling people that they're about to go vote in the primaries, like, you guys, this is Ogun State. I know Yemi Osinbajo is from here, but listen, I put him there. Like, I nominated him in my stead, in my place. And now that you're about to go, you know, have this primary elections, you've got to vote for me, Emilokan. That is what you say if you understand what party politics looks like. But if you don't, you just be shouting and crying all over the place. Why would you say that? It is tribalist. There's nothing remotely tribalistic about that statement. It's what you say if you knew what you have invested in a particular party. And Igbo should do that. So I said all of that to say that the question that Esther was asking me about what happened in 1993, there's no sense in that, saying, oh, but they voted Obasanjo. They didn't vote for Obasanjo because it was Yoruba. They voted Obasanjo because Obasanjo was PDP. They knew the Yoruba candidate. Everybody knew the Yoruba candidate. Did you know? I still remember newspaper adverts in 99 with Obasanjo wearing military uniform and Agbada on one hand. And we were saying, I mean, we were reading it, Tribune, AD was put, Alliance of Democracy, all those guys were putting it in Tribune, in newspapers, saying that this guy is half military, half civilian. I mean, that's how politics works. You have to try and demarcate your opponent. But the point of the matter is that everybody knew the Yoruba candidate in that election, and everybody knew that it was not Obasanjo. So no, you didn't vote for Obasanjo because it was Yoruba. You voted for him because he was in PDP, and he won, and you should be happy. And Obasanjo actually tried. As far as Igbos are concerned, he was a lot. He did a lot better than your fave, as far as appointment was concerned, at least. And we did. I mean, we gave us GSM, and he restructured the banking system, which is a plus, to be honest. And by the way, Soludo did that as well, which is a plus, right? But when it comes to politics, no, Yorubas don't owe. Nigeria doesn't even owe any ethnic group. Right now, everything is now flat surface. There's no anybody. Thanks a lot for the gifts. Thanks a lot, Abex. There's nobody owing anybody right now. It's now level playing field. There's no leverage that Yoruba people have. 3 people have used leverage in Nigeria. In fact, 4 people have used leverage in Nigeria. That's why I said, if you understand Nigerian politics, there's no blackmail that's going to work again. Number one, they did not use leverage. In 1966, after the coup, they were going to break up. They could have done it, and they had the right to do it. But then there were meetings that convinced them to do otherwise, and they decided to stay. Well, they were going to go in 1950. They were going to go in 1953. They were going to go in 1966, but they were convinced to remain. Southeast had leverage in 1979, because of what happened in 1970, and they used that leverage, getting Alex Ekweme in power. So you have used it. The North has also used their own. South had leverage before 2007. South had leverage. They were, kidnapping, and they had men, they had all those people, and they used that.
Busayo, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Don't worry, I have good news. We have a new mic. So tomorrow I think I should be able to use that mic. I just delivered it today. So thank you very much for telling me. The mic needs to be charged, unlike the other one they just brought. I think I should have even tried it. Maybe I'll try it towards the end. I don't like trying things in live sessions, so maybe towards the end I'll just try to see. Yes, I saw that SS having leverage. So the South had leverage in 2007, and they used it, and they got 2 things out of it. Number one, they got vice presidency. Just like the East also got vice presidency in 1979, the Southeast got vice presidency in 2007. That was Goodluck Jonathan, right? Then they got NDDC from Omar Musa Yar'Adua. Now that NDDC that they got is what has now been replicated by President Tinubu by giving every region development commission, but people are not seeing it because they are willfully blind. There's no way you have sense that you're not going to appreciate the idea of development commission, and I'll tell you why. Because apart from the fact that your governors are getting, I'm talking about all governors in Nigeria, apart from the fact that the governors are getting monthly allocations, extra money is now allocated to the development commissions to do things. Sometimes maybe in collaboration with the governors or without even working with the governors, but they have a right, a duty to do things within the regions. I mean, think about it. NDTC got over 1 billion or over 1 billion naira as allocation. That's something, right? The Northwest got about 540 something, 542 million thereabout. The Western region got over 400. Like, they're giving you stuff that you can work with. But anyway, I'm saying that with the South, that whole thing about, oh, we have oil, we're not going to allow you get whatever you want to get. They used it to their advantage, and they got vice presidency, and they also got what is it called? They got NDDC. Now all of us have the same thing like NDDC, Development Commission, all across Nigeria. Now, the West, excuse me, we used our own in 1999. We lost someone in 1998 based on the election of 1993. And so we got Obasanjo, whether we say it was Yoruba candidate or not, they gave him because they gave it to him because he was Yoruba. The North has had their own, the East have had their own, the Yoruba West has had their own. What's it called? These South people have had there's no other person with any leverage. And that's why the concept of sitting at home makes no sense if you're not South. I won't say more than that. Or Southwest. If you're not South or Southwest and you decide to sit at home, you are not thought deeply enough about the nonsense you are doing. Because it's not going to affect anybody. If you choose to sit at home in some parts of Southwest or some parts of South, it will affect a lot of things. The government will feel the heat. But you are trading and you are sitting at home. Who do you think is going to affect? What does federal government need in your region that if you decide to sit at home, they will not be able to get and they will be forced to doing something? Nothing. Let's discuss the mode of funding of development commissions later. No, I can even say it very fast now. So the first idea of having development commissions came in 2014 at the confab with the one organized by Goodluck Jonathan. By the way, the South, they don't even have any leverage anymore because after Jonathan became vice president and Umar Musa Yar'Adua passed on, may he so rest in peace. Goodluck Jonathan served 2 years. I mean, after the old drama of the kitchen cabinet, Jonathan served 2 years of his term and then 4 years as a substantive president. So he's done 6 years. So there's nobody having anything to hold over Nigeria again. That's why we say today, as far as politics is concerned, it's a free for all. There's no special consideration. There's nothing that happened to your ethnic group that did not happen to another ethnic group that should make them allow you. There's nothing like that anymore. You play the game. And at the moment, the place to play that game is within political parties, not in Nigeria. Yeah, it's a level playing field. Level playing field. The place, but there's a place, let me say it this way. There is a place where you can still have leverage. That place is your political party, not Nigeria, not amongst Nigeria population. We don't owe anybody anything. I speak as a they say the office of the citizen is the highest office in the land. So I am speaking from the office of the citizen. Nigerians owe no ethnic group nothing. As far as becoming president is concerned, you've got to play the game. So get into that party, demand what's yours, and hopefully you'll be able to get it. And I would like anybody to become president of Nigeria. But you see the thing, let me say this before I go on. One of the problems I think we have in Nigeria is that we think the choice of the president actually happens when we vote. We think our voting on the day of election is how we choose the president. And in a way, it looks like we are choosing the president, but are we really choosing the president? Are we really choosing the president on that day of presidential elections? We now go and now, I mean, I voted the last election. I'll vote next one if I'm in Nigeria. It's important to vote. But the question is, are we really choosing a president when we go out there? Let me tell you something. The president has been chosen for you. You're just choosing one of the people that have been chosen for you. Right? And I'm not talking about rigging. I'm saying that the presidential candidates, they've been chosen. You are only picking from any of them. So if you really want to choose presidents, it's in the primaries, it's in the party primaries. That's where you choose president, not this whole election that all of us are shouting, that the big one, that jamboree that all of us have to vote, you have to go out and queue. It's important, but it's the last leg. And that's why you notice that President Tinubu did not talk about Emilio Khan when he was traveling the length and breadth of Nigeria, telling people to vote for him. He didn't say it. He said it where it mattered. He said it amongst his party men. He said it amongst their own. That's where you say things like that. Most of us need to get involved in politics. I am not a partisan politician like that. So if you are interested in politics, please join a political party. I don't care which one. Join PDP, SDP, PDP, LP. I think they are beginning to think now because they already almost turned that into a tribal party. Anyway, just find one to join. The point is that it's while you're there that you're able to make the decisions that you're thinking of. This person should have been the president. This person, are they part of the party and are they part of that system? So I just felt I should say that whatever we're doing, Lord Joe, presidential election, that is, we're just affirming or we're just picking one of those who have been picked for us. It's an illusion of choice. It's an illusion of choice. You're picking one of the two that have been picked for you. The question is, why aren't you the ones picking them before the rest of us pick them? That's where party politics come in. And that's where I think ethnic groups that are very loud about their rights to be president of Nigeria, their job should be driving their ethnic people into political parties to make a change, not going around shouting and disturbing the peace of everybody. Nobody's going to make a president just because you say so. All right. How did I get here? I was talking about the spread, the way presidential of government is just too expensive. That's true, actually. So I got here by we're talking about the spread or the voting pattern in 1993. What we've heard so much that, oh, listen, the Southeast voted massively for MKO. That did not happen. There were 4 states in the eastern region, in the southeastern region at the time, and of 4, Anambra was the only state that voted uh, Baba. Some other people also voted a lot. It's just that it did not win. Okay, let me put it this way. People voted Abiola, but Abiola did not win in their state. They only won in 1 state out of 4. All right. So I don't think if a person wins 1 state. Sorry, please, you have to mute. Jeez, man. I have to take you down. I'm sorry.
Why?
But does anyone invite you here? You can go to the platform. Anyway, so that's how that happened. I'm going to move to another book. I just use that as like a way to transition. But we have some people here, so we're going to listen to them. Please, if you're just joining, please click on the heart icon beside Busuyi so you can join the team. And then you can also drop a heart to me. It's going to cost you 1 coin, just 1 coin. But it does help a lot. It helps the live get on the FYP. That's 1. Then number 2, I will be going live on a different account tomorrow or the day after. So please, I have Mumbo, my brother Ebo Junatu. So there's a new account in here, Busuyi Oris. Please follow that account so that you would know when I go live on that account. There's some restrictions on this account I'm using because of the old Civil War Labalu, Balablu. They Balablued my account, and we have some restrictions. So I will be going live on that other account tomorrow, the day after. Before the end of this week, I'll go live. So please, so you know when I do go live, kindly follow that account. I also put it in the Telegram channel so that you'll be able to follow the account as well. So thank you very much for being here, and thanks for the heart me. Thanks for your support. God bless you. All right, Solu just said he's stepping out. So we have Mr. Martin. We're going to listen to the 2, and then we'll go back to the reading. I'll be reading Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune by Max Leon once we come back. Who sanctioned your account? We know them. Yeah. Ibo George, I'm going to answer your question. Okay, let me quickly answer your question since Solu is not here. And then after I answer your question, Mr. Martin will go, then I'll go to the book. So in 2014, there was a confab, right? And in that report, there was a recommendation that just like NDDC had a development just like the Niger Delta had a development commission called NDDC, other regions of Nigeria should also have development commissions. However, the recommendation, the reason I take that document very seriously is because it's the result of everybody from different parts of Nigeria having a conversation. Now, it wasn't a perfect event. I mean, people have criticized it, said, it wasn't kini, but it's still I'll say the best after Nigerian constitution. At least the best way to alter the constitution is by following the recommendations of the confab. Maybe not to the letter, but at least just consider it. I said that to say that one of the things they said in that report was that the states in different regions should create their own development commissions, and the states in that region should fund it. So the original plan, according to that document, is that the 6 southwestern states, for instance, would form something called SWDC, and they will fund it. Now, but let me tell you one thing, and this is why I think Yoruba leaders are brilliant. I mean, and that's why I still don't understand why Yoruba people join people who have less effective leaders castigating Yoruba leaders, that you also join them to castigate your own leaders. Like you are just running amok. So let's talk facts. The confab happened in 2014, but in 2013, the Southwest already had something called the Developmental Agenda for Western Nigeria Commission, DON Commission. We had that commission before the meeting. That commission was a think tank, or is a think tank. It's a policy-making commission, but was the closest thing to a development commission that we could have had. It just so happened that it was focused on policy rather than, physical development, financial stuff, and all of that. So the beautiful thing about it for Western Nigeria, for Yoruba people, especially for people in the Southwest, is that between 2013 and 2025, for 12 years, that commission has come up with fantastic plans and policy statements. So now that we have SWDC, SWDC does not even need to reinvent the wheel. They just need to work with Don Commission or do a group of companies if they have to, and also the Southwestern governors. So the point is that originally the governors were supposed to fund the development commissions, but when President Tinubu created them, he made it so that the federal government is now funding it, just like the federal government funds NDDC. So the funding for development commissions across Nigeria is not coming from state coffers. It's not coming from the allocations. There's a separate allocation to the development commissions from the federal government, which I think is brilliant. Right? So I hope I answered that question, Ibo Jinodu. The funding is coming from the federal government. It's literally in the budget for the year, and I think it's a huge plus for Southwest, especially because we already have policy documents that SWDC will just plug into. For instance, a very good example is the intra-regional railway system. While some people are shouting, it's a federal government project. It's not a project, it's a commission. It's not a project, it's a commission. So think of that Nigerian Broadcasting Commission. You have EFCC, Kini Financial Crimes Commission. Kini what's that? What's the E in EFCC, please? Does anybody know? Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, right? So it's a commission that's focused on economic and financial crimes. The same thing with NDDC. It's a development commission focusing on Niger Delta. So SWDC, SEDC, NCDC, NEDC, NWDC, all the regions have their own DCs now. So Southwest Development Commission is a development commission focused on southwestern region of Nigeria. I was saying something about the intra-regional railway system. Did you know that the Southwestern governors had a meeting with the good people at Don Commission, and they were talking about the possibility of having a railway system within Southwest? So by the time Lagos was presenting their budget, the last one, the budget they present, the budget they're working with this year is to have a new line that will get to, I think it's around towards Agbara. Ogun State will now plug in from that axis. So Ogun State also has in its own budget a railway development, whatever. So the point is that the states are already doing something like that. So imagine you have SWDC now with the money they have. I hope it's enough. With that money, they can now ensure that the railway coming from Ogun State, the railway going outside of Lagos can be linked with the one from Ogun State, and then you can link Ogun to Oyo State, and then from Oyo State you can get to Osun State, and then from Lagos State you can get to Ondo State. No, you can actually get to Ondo State from Lagos without having to go through Ogun and Oyo State. Right? And then from there to Ekiti State, and then Ekiti to Osun, or to Ondo to Osun, and then you can have that situation where I think we have leaders that are thinking. I just think that they need to think a bit bigger, and God help them. But I think also we should stop this thing where everybody is insulting their leaders. Let me also join them to insult mine. The leader you are insulting is doing far better than the person who is telling you to insult. I mean, his own leader is doing far worse than the person who you are insulting. So you have your own father. B has his own father. B's father is irresponsible. Your own father is responsible, but you want more. But B is telling you to insult your father. Both of you are insulting your father, but B is protecting his own father, even though his own father is irresponsible. That's the story of Nigeria and insulting Yoruba Southwest governors. So I'm trusting that they will come up with this railway thing. Lagos is already doing it. Ogun State has also included this in their own budget. So hopefully this year, and then you have Oyo, Osun, Ondo. Everybody will have to find a way to link up. All of that to say that this thing where everybody is saying President Tinubu, at least you can say governor, whoever. then the electrification, for instance, or the provision generating electricity and transmission, for instance, is being unbundled now. And I saw something yesterday. Sorry, Mr. Martin. Somebody said something yesterday that the federal government has to unbundle electricity generation, and I was like, why do people criticize the government on things that have been done? Like, Buhari did that before he left. You as an individual today can go to Nigeria and generate electricity and even sell. The local government can do it. Small companies can do it. State governments can do it. The idea of always saying, oh, let them do, what we want to criticize, at least let's try and understand it before we criticize it. We can get the governors to now start looking in that direction. We can also start companies and do those things. A lot of us who live abroad and talk about the greatness of where we're living, just remember that all those things, most of the time, in most cases, and when you're not alone, okay, so government, so if you have opportunity to do it here, why aren't we taking advantage of it? So I hope that we're able to do that. But Southwest is on a very, very good trajectory, and if they're making any mistakes, we speak out and criticize it. But all this just criticize for criticizing sake makes no sense, especially when we're not acknowledging what they have done. For instance, I was in Oyo State the other day, and the roads are beautiful, right? And it's not done by federal government; it was done by the state government, and it was not just in Ibadan. They've done it into other parts of Oyo State. Of course, Ibadan will always have more because it's the capital, but they've done it in other parts of Oyo State as well, right? Ogun State is rehabilitating their roads. Like, let's stop just criticizing. If you can acknowledge what they've done well or what they're doing right, then it makes it, you now have the authority to say you are not doing this, and then they will say, okay, this person doesn't. It's not like the person just hates us. But if you're just doing, let us insult our father together, could make sense. All right, Mr. Martin, please go on before I go back to the book.
Good afternoon, Mr. Busuyi. You have said everything perfectly well. I remember that election during Awolowo time. I was a very young boy then. It's one of the most difficult elections in Nigeria history. Most contentious election, 12-2 Akinjide Akinloye, Marudiko, all these people, Waziri, all those other people. What we witnessed during our president election, Tinubu or MKO, cannot be compared to that election, because Awolowo was seen as somebody that actually had to be Nigeria leader, that Nigeria had been waiting for. It was so contentious that time that even people were buying themselves that time. So what you said in regard to that election was absolutely true, and we knew the role played by Obasanjo in that kind of election. Then we Yoruba accused him for denying Awolowo that election. We even accused MK with that time as well. We accused MK with that time. Yes. We eventually forgive MKO during SDP. We forgave him. But that time, the Obasanjo own, he doesn't have remorsefulness. To me, to Yoruba plight, to that kind of election, he doesn't want to agree in some fault in that election. Awolowo election. That's why Yoruba don't see him as actually having Yoruba interest in mind. For not as him being, he has remorseful to that mistake he made. We won't have treated him the way we treated him. Why the Igbo voted for him? That election, they seen that Yoruba doesn't support it. Because election, Olufalaye Obasanjo election was a very tough contention. Yoruba doesn't want Obasanjo to be there. I could remember what Adesoya did at Oshodi during that election. When it's like a battle between, they want to score the score of Awolowo battle. Those Awois, they came out en masse against Obasanjo because they seen what he did to Awolowo that time. That was why the election was towards Olufalaye. And the Igbo on their own side see that we are not in support of Obasanjo. They run towards Obasanjo because they are always in opposition to Yoruba. Anything that Yoruba politics agenda is towards, Igbo will go opposite. So to Esther that saying that Is it Yoruba interest? Let me tell you, we are not a baby in Nigeria politics. We've seen him playing himself again and again and again. Even the what MKO was the formation of two political systems, SDP, NRC. NRC was the Northern hijacked that NRC party, while we Southerners clinched on SDP party. That was the rescue ground for MKO that time. And we saw what happened that time, that election. Before the election actually took place, there have been many cancellations, many postponements, many different parties have been formed and cancelled it. So, but for the SDP, we have Igbo who are massively in NRC that time, to be honest with you. They don't want to be in a party that Yoruba is. They want to be in the opposite party. When they formed that NRC, SDP, initially it was SDP for South, NRC for North. The moment they felt that Yoruba is head of the SDP, they ran to NRC, the Igbo. They ran to NRC. So that's what gave Tofa leverage in Igbo land. Because they see that SDP is purely Yoruba. So we understood all these things. So it's better for us to be passing the information to our children to actually understand how politics being played in Nigeria history. Mr. Busuyi, I salute your courage. You are doing excellent work. You did justice to this history because it's part of our history. And our children, our coming generation have to understand this game and to know how to play the game. So if you go against Yoruba interest, we will deal with you as we deal with Obasanjo. I repeat, if you are Yoruba, if you go against Yoruba interest, we will outside you. We will deal with you as we deal with Obasanjo. Obasanjo is Yoruba man. We cannot take it away from him. But for the fact that he doesn't have the core principle of Yoruba within it, we don't see it being played. He even dealt with Yoruba when he was president. He would tell the Lagos State money allocation during a Tinubu governorship of Lagos State. He went to hell to fight Yoruba throughout in government. We understood what he did. But having said that, history is history. But I want all our young ones to go to open their ear very well and understand what we are being taught here. What Brad Busuyi is doing here is teaching you young ones how political history in Nigeria are being folding and voting from inception. Thank you, Mr. Busuyi. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. No, I can't hear you again. I can't hear you.
Banko.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Show sound clear.
We can hear you.
You sound very clear.
Yeah.
Echo, Abi. Is it better now? Is it better?
Somehow.
Okay, I think it's good. Yeah, it's perfect, right? All right, so yes. I got this. Yeah, I got this, and I think it's probably going to help. I don't know if I should use it like this or if I should use my table. But now I have to use the assets, so yeah, it's feeling very awkward. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. This is awkward for me because I don't like putting this in my head. It's much better. Oh, okay. Yes, there's a table here, but let me not start all of those things now. So I'm going to, the table is, I'm going to have to stand up and bring it. We're going to use this tomorrow. Now that I think it's good, right? Just put it on the table. Yeah, we will. On my look big in here. Otobi, so me fellow Dagbensi. I'm a later. So this is part of what, if you're one of the sponsors, this is part of what your money bought. All right, we'll talk about the others. By the way, there was a mic that I had before, and we had to get a sound card for. So probably using that on the podcast and all of that. Thank you very much for your support.
Let's go back to our trusted brother, Click Mike. Mr. Martin Shangbome.
Sir.
Ṣeré lè yín sí ẹ. Tẹ́ bá sọ̀rọ̀ máa gbọ́. The other one yẹn. Tẹ́ bá sọ̀rọ̀ tí n bá sọ̀rọ̀ mo tún gbọ́ ara mi nínú yẹn. Tẹ́ mo fẹ́ a máa lo eléyìí sí. The sponsor are tribalistic politicians. Yes, so Ekesi the king. My sponsors are tribalistic politicians.
I need àwọn baby too on don't be politics. They come and they will give you presidency in your house, eh? Don't go and fight for it, eh? I'm glad for this class. I'm so glad. Every Yoruba that's not here to listen, please come here and listen and learn. The event have took place in Nigeria history for many. I was very young during Awolowo election. I didn't vote because I was a young boy, but my parents voted. Which like they're saying that area boy. We don't even want area boy now. Go and see area boy that time. In our area, during the election, you cannot go anywhere. Coffee everywhere. Coffee. They will block the road with axe and cutlasses. That time. It was like hot politics. We don't do that again now. Nigeria have developed, have progressed compared to what we witnessed that time. So all the young one that doesn't know what God politics, that compare shouting, they don't let us have vote. Go and see that time, what happened that time. They will even burn your house down if you dare come outside. But today, we have developed, we have moved forward as a nation. We have matured politically. So, election that time, now do or die. Do or buy that time, election that time. So, the June Awolowo election is one of the contextual elections in Nigeria history. This Tinubu election is nothing compared to Awolowo election. We went to court. People are fighting everywhere, all over country. So I was very young, but I witnessed it. So what we are saying now is that all the young ones, our children that are outside there, they should come down here and learn Nigeria politics history. Mr. Busuyi is doing actually good thing. Mr. Busuyi is doing actually good thing to educate us, to remind us what have took place in Nigeria history. Nobody should gaslight you. Nobody should intimidate you on your political view. Don't accept that. Don't accept that. Politics in Nigeria are already be tribal. Politics in Nigeria are already be tribal from inception. So it depends on the way you play your rules. We saw what Awolowo did, what MKO did during Awolowo time. We know. We witnessed MKO involvement that time as well. Before he eventually came back home. MKO wasn't a small boy in Nigeria politics. MKO had been playing Nigeria politics right from Awolowo time. MKO. He had been there before he actually contested. Election in Nigeria is not a baby. You can't just wake up in a day to be a president. It's not done. Before MKO came out to contest for presidency, MKO has spent more than 30 years in Nigeria politics. MKO have formed many parties. He has run up and down in Nigeria politics. You are not a baby in Nigeria politics and say, I'm obedient. Obedient for where? Have you fought in the trenches? You cannot just wake up one day to be a president in Nigeria. You might even get old before you can be president in Nigeria because you have to take many blows everywhere in Nigeria politics. There's never been anybody that in my history, in my understanding, that contest for Nigeria politics, presidency, that's not old man. Because you will suffer. I've never witnessed it. Before MKO came out, that God gave him trophy during SDP days, MKO had been in MPN. He was in MPN one time. He ran to other party. He has been old in the Nigeria political game before he came out to the presidency. Presidency is not a money. If you want to be young ones, if you want to be president, Nigeria president, start preparing now. Because it's going to take you a long time before you can be there. You are not going to be saying, it's time for the young. Where is the young coming from? Young time, we want young one. Nigeria politics is not like that. You must be able to work very hard.
One more minute, Mr. Martin. One more minute.
Okay, sir. So you must be able to work very hard to be able to be in that position and acquire more experiences and understand Nigeria politics system very well. And understand every geopolitical zones in Nigeria to be able to relate with everybody in Nigeria before you can be in the Nigeria presidency. It's not a baby. It's not because I'm obedient. If you're obedient, to wake up to be obedient, you can never be president of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I agree with everything you said, but I just want to add something. Some very tiny, just a very tiny detail. That I think because of the way, hi Siema, I think because of the way MKO moved around in Nigeria, it's difficult to believe how old he was when he won that election. Without anybody thinking about it, can you guess how old MKO was when he won the election? Mr. Martin, shall I guess?
Talking to me, sir?
Yeah, Ben, sir. When shall I guess how old MKO was when win election?
I think it should be in middle 60s.
He was 55.
He was 55. That means he went to politics very, very young.
He was 55.
So when does he start in politics? Which year?
When we say MKO was there with our law, we're talking about in the 70s, so not in
yeah.
What
was his age? What was his age then?
In 79, MKO would be around 42.
No, but that time when he was fighting with Awolowo.
Yeah, now that's around 90. That's around 1979. So it was in his 40s, right?
I think probably being in politics 20s.
Yes. No. He's not in 20. He wasn't a politician like that. I mean, our coming back with UPA was in 1979. MKO was born in 1937. So that would put him at 42. 79. Yes, so 79 to 89 is 10 years. 89 to 93 is 4 years. That's just 14 years later. So his foray into politics is actually it was late 1970s into early 1980s. He was not a teenager, he was already in his 40s. But let me just, I'm going to read something. I'm going to read a book. Now, this book, there's certain things that he says in this book that are, they may not sound like it's part of this conversation on June 12th, but I think it's better to listen to it because the reading is going to be very interesting. The book is called Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune, written by Mark Leon. The chapter 1 is called Children of Oduduwa. Now, there are some jabs. This man usually throws jabs at Yoruba people, sometimes unnecessarily, but we'll take it and then we'll go on. Nigeria's military first seized power on January 15, 1966. The coup leaders described the takeover as a brief and temporary revolution to end corruption and ethnic rivalry. Over a quarter of a century and 7 military governments later, the military was still in power. However, after 25 years of military rule, Nigeria was on the final lap of its marathon secular route back to democracy. Nigeria's military president, General Ibrahim Babangida, had promised to end his 8-year reign in power and return Nigeria to elected civilian rule on August 27, 1993. The return had already been postponed twice from 1990 to 1992, and yet again to June 12, 1993. By 1993, Nigeria was a quasi-democratic and had elected governors and deputy governors in all 30 states, and had elected senators and representatives in its 2-chamber National Assembly. By the way, that was when Tinubu first became a senator. Well, that was when he became a senator. Only 9 members of the government were serving military officers. The final outstanding step on Nigeria's road to democracy was to elect a civilian president. The question of who would become president reactivated old political networks and elevated the political fortunes of an entire region. The Yoruba people of southwestern Nigeria can simultaneously take credit for contributing to political. Sorry, let me take that slowly. The Yoruba, the Yoruba people of southwestern Nigeria can simultaneously take credit for contributing to Nigeria's political sophistication and also the blame for acting as exporters of political instability. I said it's going to throw jabs. Well, more jabs coming. Political crisis in Yoruba land have a habit of spilling over into other parts of the country. In 1962, the Action Group Party split when its leader, Obafemi Awolowo, tried to dismiss his deputy, Samuel Akintola. When the Western Region House of Assembly met to debate a motion of no confidence in Akintola, Yoruba members of parliament engaged in a chaotic fight inside the chambers, during which they attacked each other with chairs, tables, and even the speaker's ceremonial mace. Baton and tear gas wielding police entered the chambers to restrain the fighting assemblymen. The political crisis in Western region descended into a state of anarchy, which earned the region the nickname of the Wild West. The federal government declared a state of emergency in the region. By the way, okay, let me finish, I will explain. The federal government declared a state of emergency in the region in 1962 and deployed soldiers. These events, combined with Awolowo's imprisonment for treason, were contributory causes of two fratricidal military coups in 1966, during which Igbo and Northern soldiers murdered each other. Somehow, a political crisis in the southwest acted as a slippery slope that led to two military coups and a civil war in which the north and southeast were the main protagonists. In contrast, in 1993, the Yorubas were about to import a national political crisis, turning it into a local one, rather than exporting a regional crisis into other parts of the country. Let me quickly say something on that topic. We've discussed here how Awo was the leader of government business from 1952 to 53. He became the premier of the region from 1954 to 1959 when he decided to go to the center. When he was going to the center, he was going to, of course, wanted to be the prime minister. It didn't work out. Wanted to be the finance minister with Zeke. That didn't work out because Zeke had another plan with the North. Eventually, he became the opposition leader. However, he was still the leader of the party in Ibadan, but was opposition leader in Lagos. That's in the federal parliament. And then we already discussed a lot how they had himself and his deputy, Akintola, who eventually became the premier after he moved to Lagos. They had lots of issues, issues that bordered on popularity, and Akintola also tried to solve with populism. We talked about the fact that he went on and on, different things being done, whether at the marketing board or with taxation, different kind of funny policies. And eventually they were going to remove Akintola. And then they moved the motion in the Western Parliament and somebody started fighting. The person's name, you probably know that his son is very popular in Nigerian politics. Anyway, they got into, I was going to say something about how I'm connected, but anyway, they got into some physicals and then, but here's where it gets interesting. The federal government declares a state of emergency because something happened in parliament. How many times have things happened in parliament over the last 60 years in Nigeria where nothing happens in town? The truth of the matter is that it was planned. The truth of the matter is that the federal government, led by Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, actually wanted what happened in the West to happen. Yes, they declared a state of emergency and brought in Maje Kodumi to be the administrator for that period. But then the point is, why would you do that when it wasn't like anything was happening in town? So you declare state of emergency when there's trouble, there's riot in town. There was nothing happening. All that happened within the chambers, and then the federal government is what the federal government wanted to do. Eventually, they pushed some buttons and got Awolowo in prison for treasonable felony. So it is true. Let me just say that, and I'm going to concede. And last week I was saying that when it comes to the history of Nigeria, especially when it has to do with the coup, that the Western region would have to take responsibility for the Wild Wild West, because without the Wild Wild West, sorry, I need to charge this thing, sorry. Don't worry, we'll be off this thing by tomorrow. I won't have to carry all these things around.
was saying that
the Wild Wild West, there will be no pretext for the coup. I mean, yes, they talked about tribalism and nepotism, but they also talked about the fact that the crisis in the Western region was a catalyst, so to say, for the so-called revolution. So we have to take responsibility for that. Like, we essentially exported Wala because um, one person wanted to work with the North, the other one didn't want to work with the North. But we didn't just do that on our own. We also had people working with Akintola, for instance, to ensure the destabilization of Yoruba land, whether it was in 62 or even in 65, when elections, were held and results were announced even before votes were counted. So that's something that Yoruba people, I mean, we have to take responsibility for. And like they always say, it is what it is. So 62 was when the whole Wala started, when the party split, and one part went with Akintola, the other one was loyal to Awolowo. The one that went to Akintola worked with NCNC, with Michael Okwara, and then later on with, and also with NPC, that's Amadou Bello stroke Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Anyway, that happened. But the good thing is that by 1993, we are doing something that's opposite of what we did in 62 or 65, which according to this man, it says, in contrast, in 1993, the Yorubas were about to import a national political crisis and turn it into a local one, rather than exporting a regional crisis into other parts of Nigeria. So let's continue reading. The book is called Nigeria Soldiers of Fortune by Max Cillian. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right because that's his name himself. I don't know who gave him that name. That name, I don't think is his real name. Alone. Let me look for his name. I'll pronounce it very well. Max Cillian. That was correct. It might be no. I can be like that sometimes just to be sure. All right, so let's go to the next part. Let's meet at the polls with electoral reform and Ekure PO. I am Solomon Obasanjo David. I'm from Iperoremo, Ogun State, ardent, obedient. Are you sure you still have your heads on your shoulders, or did you mortgage it in order to become a member of obedient? Hmm? Because you come up here and you are shouting Ekure, doesn't make you look like a very smart person. But let's go back to what we're reading before we have you introduce Kotafe. Since the 1960s, Yoruba politics have been dominated by a political orientation known as Awoism. The phrase refers to the political philosophy of the late Yoruba political leader Obafemi Awolowo, who espoused policies he referred to as democratic socialism. Its primary tenets were welfarism, free social services, and job creation. Awolowo loomed large over Yoruba politics for over 40 years. He was He was an intensely intellectual man with great energy. In 1945, he co-founded and became the secretary of Egbomo Odudua, Society for the Descendants of Odudua. In Yoruba allegory, Odudua is a progenitor of Yoruba royal dynasties and is revered as the father of the Yoruba people. In 1951, Egbomo Odudua evolved into a political party called the Action Group, which was led by Awolowo. The Action Group developed the most clearly articulated and differentiated political ideology of any post-independence party in southern Nigeria. Awolowo had a groundbreaking term of office as the premier of Nigeria's Yoruba-dominated western region between 1955 and 59. It's supposed to be 54. It's wrong here. It's 54. During this time, he introduced free education and free healthcare in his region and established the first television station in Africa. Awolowo exercised a hypnotic political hold on the Yoruba. Now he's about to do his normal Max Cillian thing. I cannot read out the things he's saying. Some of those things are just the rhetoric that we already moved past. Let me go to the part that matters. Okay. Okay. Leaders from other ethnic groups had the good sense to recognize how important Awolowo was to his people, and also to publicize and also to publicly praise him. President Babangida marked Awolowo's 77th birthday in 1986 by sending him a flattering letter in which he greeted Awolowo with the salutation of "My dear Papa" and described him as the main issue in Nigerian politics during the last 35 years. The main political question has been whether you are with Awolowo or against him. However, one large prize eluded Awolowo throughout his illustrious life. Try as he might, he never became Nigeria's president. This failure to capture a position he felt he merited devastated him and his followers. When Awolowo died in 1987, prominent Nigerians queued up to eulogize him. The Igbo leader, Chukwuemeka Ojukwu, described him as the best president Nigeria never had. Awolowo's political ideology did not die with him. We are going to June 12th, but just stay with me, please. Awolowo's political ideology did not die with him. Many of those who benefited from his pioneering social welfare programs continue to revere him. They refer to themselves as Omo Awolowo, Awolowo's children, or Awoists, disciples of Awolowo and his principles. We are Awoists, by the way, proudly so. Awolowo's ideas remain so deeply ingrained in the political consciousness of the Yoruba that being an Awoist is regarded by many Yorubas as the only legitimate apprenticeship prior to becoming a Yoruba politician on the national stage. Many Yoruba politicians mimicked Awolowo by wearing a red face cap, round-trimmed glasses, and even flashing the V victory sign, all Awolowo's trademarks. Those who opposed Awolowo or who were not Awoists were often Those who opposed Awolowo or who were not Awoists were often regarded as traitors to the Yoruba people. After the 1993 political crisis, the Awoists resuscitated the Yoruba cultural organization Afenifere, literally Society of Those Who Love Good for All, as a platform for Yoruba political solidarity. Afenifere was part political movement, part cultural organization, and part personality cult, if you say so. It started its meetings with incantations evoking Awolowo and his ideals. Its leadership and succession were gerontocratic. It was led by the veteran Awoist Michael Adekunle Ajasin, the former governor of Ondo State between 1979 and 1983, who was a member of Awolowo's Unity Party of Nigeria. Let me just make a little comment on some of these things. In 86, IBB is calling Awo my dear papa. In 2025, IBB is saying that Awo was angry with him in 1987 after he had died. So maybe Awo woke up from the dead and appeared to him to tell him that decree number 9 was wrong. I don't know how that happened. That was one. Number 2, Awo's greatness is not something you can chalk down to Yoruba or just because he's Yoruba and only Yoruba people consider him great. People consider him great regardless of where they are, right? And so even Ojukwu said about him was the best president Nigeria never had. We'll take that as a compliment, you know. And yes, it is true, and it's exactly what I just said earlier. The reason Yoruba people do not count Obasanjo administration as Yoruba administration is because Obasanjo was not even a member of Afenifere. Obasanjo did not care for Awo. He was literally the person who was overseeing the elections that ensured the loss of Awo, even when people said that he won. So there's no way you're going to claim to be a political leader in Yoruba circle and not have something. I mean, it's just what it is. You might say, oh, that's deification, but who cares? Like, I've said it several times. If we're in the 14th century or 15th century, Awolowo would be an Orisha. You would have to venerate him. It's just the way it is, right? And we don't have to do that, no, but we have his ideology to live by. So let me continue. Throughout Nigeria's post-independence history of the Yoruba, the Yoruba had traditionally played second fiddle to whoever led Nigeria. After the military takeover in 1966, Yoruba military officers acted as deputies to the Igbo and northern military heads of state for the next decade. Brigadier Babafemi Ogundipe, Vice Admiral Joseph Way, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo. From 1979 until 1993, they were frozen out of leadership altogether. The Yoruba developed a tradition of being political silver medalists. Awolowo's death politically orphaned the Yoruba. He had served a dual role as Yoruba leader and also as the political representative on the national stage. After his death, Yoruba politics were dominated by two trends. Firstly, there was search for another iconic Moses-like leader to inherit Awolowo's dual role as ethnic leader and Yoruba representative on the national stage. Secondly, a burning sense of injustice arose. The Yoruba developed a long persecution narrative that included events such as Awolowo's treason conviction, his failure to become president, and the military coup of 1983, which precluded the ruling National Party of Nigeria from fielding a southern presidential candidate in the next presidential election scheduled for 1987. Yorubas interpreted all these events as acts deliberately implemented to punish them or block their aspirations for the political leadership of Nigeria, which they deserved. Babangida's promise to return Nigeria to democracy gave the Awois a chance to once again challenge for political leadership and posthumously fulfill Awolowo's unfinished legacy. Three Awoists, Olufalaye, Ajibola Bolaige, and Lateef Jakonde, saw themselves as credible successors to Awolowo and potential candidates. However, the Awoist ambitions were dashed by the unpredictable machinations of Babangida's transition without end to democracy. In December 1992, Babangida banned 23 presidential aspirants, including the Awoists, from further participation in the transition program. His decision virtually eliminated all Yoruba presidential candidates that met the Awoist criteria and allowed new Hey, Jesus Christ. 1 second, please. I think I need to drink water or something. When you're waiting, come in. All right, let's go back. Babangida's decision virtually eliminated all Yoruba presidential candidates and who met the all Yoruba presidential candidates that met the Awoist criteria and allowed new contenders to emerge. One of them was his close friend, Moshood Abiola. Abiola was not an Awoist. Having kept out of politics since the early 1980s to consolidate his business empire, Abiola was enabled by the banning of so many presidential aspirants to emerge from the fringes to become a presidential candidate in 1993. There's a video that I have here. I'll see if I can find it quickly of when people were having a conversation with Abiola. This must be sometime in 1992 about running for presidency, and he kept saying he wasn't sure if that was a good idea for presidency, and he kept saying he wasn't sure if that was a good idea. There was an interview granted in his house, and maybe I'm going to play it later. Anyway, the point is that Abiola was not an Awoist. Now, somebody came, I think it was his wife, right? Abiola was also a member of the old, and yes, Mr. Latunji, yes, absolutely. There was a meeting, there was an event, right? And one of Abiola's wives, one of them, had attended that event. It was an online event, and was speaking, and somebody said, "Oh, this is a clinic of Awolowo." And I was like, "Why are you guys are you acting like a psychopath?" It was never, and well, let me just be this way, it was not an Awoist. But circumstances actually threw him up to be the quote-unquote Yoruba representative. He wasn't even going there to represent Yoruba people. It just so happened that he was Yoruba, and that was the only way Yoruba could feel like seen or represented, because the ones that we wanted to run were already disqualified by IBB. And we read it in his book, Johnny in Service. He said what he did. He said there were many people wanted to be founders, nobody wanted to be joiners. Those were his words. There's a long speech that he released, at the time, trying to talk about how a lot of people wanted to found their own parties. There were many parties, and he was wondering why there were so many parties, that kind of thing. I will see if I can find that speech. You see, but the point is that by the time we had MKO became our only way of seeing someone from the Yoruba stock, because all the Awois that could have gotten there, whether it was Lateef Jakonde or was Bolaige or was Olufalaye, none of them could get there because of what IBB had done. But let me read something to you about in IBB's book about his relationship with MKO. We're going to go back to Maxilon's book. We'll be going back and forth. So MKO says, IBB says here, two names stood out from the pack of interested persons In fact, let me read something from his book to support what Maxillon said in his other book. He says here, the two political parties remain fully engaged as we enter the final stages toward the June 12 presidential elections. The disqualification of the last 23 presidential aspirants opened the door to new contestants who were presumed to have been encouraged by the option A4 nomination system to join the race. So he's also confirming that he indeed disqualified 23 presidential candidates or aspirants. Let's go on. Two names. Speculations were rife that different interest groups had approached names like General Yakubu Gowon, Olorogun Michael Ibru, Laji Metama Sule, and Chief Ralph Uwetre to throw their hats in the ring. Two names stood out from that pack of interested persons, Alhaji Bashir Tofa and Chief MK Abiola. Taking advantage of the new A4 nomination process, Abiola under the SDP and Tofa under the NRC commenced the nomination processes through their different wards in Abeokuta and Kano, respectively, through the local government and state congresses to the national level. As it turned out, I knew both prospective candidates reasonably well. I first met MK Abiola in 1974, when as a young commander, sorry about that, I had to attend to something. All right, so we're back. So it says here, I first met MK Abiola in 1974, when, as a young commander of the Reconnaissance Regiment, I was sent by the Minister of Communications, Brigadier Muritala Mohammed, to evaluate the when he entered the race for the office of the president, he had become not only a closer personal friend, but also an immensely wealthy man of considerable national influence. So I was delighted that a man of his stature entered the race, just as I was glad that Bashir Tofa had also thrown his cap in the ring. Although far less known to me than Abiola, Tofa, a Kanuri businessman who had made Kano his home, was also a personal friend. Please, let's power tap. We're already on Amber Alert. Please, let's power tap. We're on 21.3. Please, I really need us to do this so that we don't have this issue again. Let's get this to 40K. If you can, if your hands are not too busy, please, let's power tap. At this point, I think I should also power tap. Nah, TikTok we did. But let me continue reading. And I trust that we're doing it, but we really need to. Thank you very much. Thanks for your support, everyone. Let me continue. As it turned out, Abiola and Tofa won the presidential primaries for the different parties. While Abiola scored 2,683 votes to win the SDP convention held in Jos in March 1993, Tofa scored 4,261 votes to emerge as the NRC's consensus candidate at the convention held in Port Harcourt. While Abiola, a southern Muslim, defied conventional wisdom by picking another Muslim, Alhaji Babagana Kingibe, a Kanuri from Borno, as his running mate for the June 12 presidential elections. Listen to what I'm about to read, please, guys. Tofa, somebody asked, why did Igbos vote Tofa? I'm going to read it slowly. Tofa picked Sylvester Ugo, a Christian Igbo who had had a career in banking. It's a miracle Tofa lost in Anambra State. And we have to remember this information from history because people say, oh, it's only when Obi wanted to become president. If not, we have voted for Yoruba. It's not like that. Abiola's VP, of course, you know the song. Abiola na the man, or SDP na the party to solve our problem and give us better life. MKO, MKO, MKO. There's one they said, Abiola, progress. Now he be the man for better tomorrow. There's one they did with Abiola and Kingibe. They were singing their names together. So Abiola is Yoruba Muslim. Kingibe is Northern Muslim. Tofa is Northern Muslim from Kano, but his deputy was an Ugo. Was an Ugo. Was a Christian. Was a Christian Igbo. Why did they vote for? Listen, let me tell you something. Is it a problem that they voted for an Igbo person in the Southeast? No. No. After all, Abiola cleared all the states in the West. Let me tell you what the problem is. The problem is the moral superiority and the unnecessary pedestals that people place themselves on. When they say things like, we are not tribal because we don't vote for our people, but you guys are tribal. Like, you're exactly like every other group. That's the problem. If you vote for your person because he's the vice president, like, it makes sense. The real issue is that while you're doing it, you are standing in front of people's face and like, we're not doing it. You're the only one that, like. So when you see people push back, it's not so much because there's something wrong with voting your ethnic person. Is the fact that in your rhetoric, you have made it a cardinal sin for someone to vote for the ethnic person just because you don't do it. Meanwhile, in your history, you've done it just like every other group. And you should not have to apologize for doing it. Let me tell you, one of the issues is a conundrum. It's a huge conundrum that people from the Southeast find themselves in. And the conundrum is the assumption of superiority without anybody asking you to get it. Once you put yourself in that place, you now have to prove it. But because you have no way to prove it, it's going to look like people hate you. They don't hate you because this nonsense rhetoric of we are better than everybody, we don't do it, it's the problem. It also shows there's always been a political romance between the North and the South. Absolutely. In 1959, leading to 1960, all the way from 60 to 66, there was romance between the North and the East. In 79, there was romance between the North and the East, between Zik and Shagari, MPP and MPN. In 93, there was romance between the North and the East, with Tofa. Even that other one, Shagari also had romance, with Alex Equipment because he picked the East, but also with NPP. And that's why I said that if you're looking for the romance between Yoruba people and the North, it literally just happened in 2015. It never existed before 2015. What you had, for instance, with Abiola was, we didn't win, so we can't count it. Well, he won, but he did not become president. But he did parley with the North. But it wasn't even Fulani. It was Kanuri, just like Tinubu. I love seeing patterns. Shetima is not Fulani. Because there's some Yoruba people that show, there are people from the South especially, just generally Southerners, just assume that anybody from the North is Hausa. Now they say maybe I'm Fulani. Shetima is not Hausa. It's neither Hausa nor Fulani. He's a Kanuri man. Babangana Kingibe, the deputy to MQ Abela, was also not a Fulani or a Hausa man. He was also a Kanuri person. So why did Igbos vote for Tofa? Because he was a good person. They didn't even know him. MKO was this larger-than-life person who was doling out money to different people in different parts of Nigeria before elections came. And I remember when elections started, we all ate our Abela biscuits now. Would have been short bread, but I can still feel the taste in my mouth. I can still feel that taste. Abela biscuits, Abela milk. I don't even know if it was Abela that was making it or people just made it and named it after him. But we all ate it and we enjoyed it. Basically, no, it's true. I can still feel that taste. That biscuit is quality. Or it was, I'm saying it as if I'm stating it. It was really nice, 93. So I don't know whether it was not that made it or people made it for him. But the thing is, when it came to philanthropy. Abiola was the definition of philanthropy, and it had nothing to do with his ethnicity. Right? It was good to everyone. He sent people to school. He had businesses. He had Concord newspapers. He had, yes, thank you, T. He had bakeries. He had a football team, Abiola Babes, and people were playing for him regardless of where you're from. He had a bank. It was into oil, even agriculture. I mean, just about everything. Employ people from different places, you know. Baba BC, Baba Resi, Summit Oil, thank you. Baba BC, Baba Resi, Baba was everywhere. It was good to everyone. He had airline, of course, he had Concord newspaper. One day, I think I should read it today. Where is that thing? Where did I read it? I'd love to read a report that Concord actually wrote on Awo. Just to tell you the kind of gulf that existed between Awo and Abiola. This was in the 1980s. I'm trying to remember the book. I read it last week, but I read many books since then, so I'm trying to know the exact one. Where they were saying Awo had hectares of land in Makoko, and that he was, they remove people. They published it in Concord. Concord was writing things about Abiola that they didn't even bother to verify. Of course, sorry, they were writing things about Awo. They didn't even bother to verify. He was traveling to the US for his vacation, and then when he came back, he addressed everything at the airport. There was a press not just press statement. It was a press conference, and told journalists everything that happened, how he got his land. I can see the page where I read. I'm just trying to remember the exact book, but if I remember it, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll read it another day. We're talking about how all these houses have been transferred to Didiolu Estate. By the way, Didiolu is his wife's name. Didiolu Limited, and that his house in Apapa, he had built it with money from, I think, from Barclays. His house in Yagon Korea to. Anyway, the point was that Concord, which was owned by Abiola, Wamba Babajabi. And that's why originally Yoruba would live like Abiola. But, and I said that to say that we eventually had to have him because it was the only option we had. But when it came to the way he played, he uses philanthropy in Nigeria, and even else, did you know that Abiola was the one that was driving the course of reparations in Africa? There's a video of him talking about it. I'll see if I can find it. Reparations are then the Americans that everybody's talking about in America. Abiola was asking the world to pay Africa. Let's see if I can find it. It was shocking when I found it. I think I saw it a long time ago, but I'll see if I can find it. I'll just play it. Shoot. Timbari my play for him. But it was everywhere, right? He was into sports, he was into this, he was into that. He helped people regardless of where they were from, right? Yeah, some people say it's the reason. Let me play. I'm going to have to look for it later on. The ones I'm seeing are good, but they're not that one. 1 second, give me a second. I'll probably just read something about it, but I'll see if I can find a video. If I don't find a video, I'll read something. And I'm sure we're not like those people who always say that without videos, we don't have sources. Okay, let me read this one. 1 second, please. I'm just trying to. It's too long, so I'm trying to focus on something. All right. So it says mention the name Abiola today, and what comes to mind are either his numerous philanthropic activities or his bid for the country's presidency in the historic but cruelly aborted June 12, 1993 presidential election. But Abiola meant much more than this. He was easily the wealthiest black man in his lifetime. A key mission he adopted later in his life was a vigorous campaign for the payment of reparations to Africa for the depredations of slavery, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Abiola selflessly deployed his enormous resources towards the attainment of this end of correcting a historic injustice and monumental crime against humanity. Giving a rationale for his crusade in a speech in London in 1992, Abiola declared, "Our demand for reparations is based on the tripod of moral, historic, and legal arguments. Who knows what path Africa's social development would have taken if our great centers of civilization had not been raised in search of human cargo? Who knows how our economies would have developed?" In December 1990, Abiola convened and sponsored the first World Conference on Reparations at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos, where he formally inaugurated the reparations campaign. The campaign moved to the continental level in June 1991, when the heads of state and government of the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, as well as the 55th Council of Ministers of the Union, passed a resolution recognizing the injustice of slavery in Africa and affirmed the continent's right to reparations. The Eminent Persons Group, set up to steer the reparations campaign, convened the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations in Abuja in April 1993, with participants drawn from Africa, Asia, America, and Europe. The conference issued a communique reiterating the imperative of paying reparations to Africa for the physical and psychological brutality, sociocultural dislocation, and economic dysfunction caused by slavery, colonialism, and imperialism in general. Acts of injustice without parallel in human history. All of these efforts were personally funded by Chief M.K. Abiola, even though the Babangida regime later donated a sum of $500,000 to the cause. Excuse me. It was as the campaign was gaining momentum that Abiola ventured into politics to contest Nigeria's presidency on the platform of the Social Democratic Party, a distraction that led to his eventual tragic fate. But why did MKO abandon the reparations crusade? Could he have seen that paying reparations to largely corrupt, decadent, and oppressive African states would be like pouring water down a basket? Could he have noticed that most African leaders in their brazen contempt for and mistreatment of their people are no better than pre-colonial slave masters and their African collaborators? Could he have noticed the majority of African leaders have slavishly and voluntarily sold their intellects to Western international? Anyway, we'll go back to all of this. Anyway, the point is, by the way, this is from a book called Blacks in Diaspora. It was written by A.O. Ali and published in the Nation website. Anyway, the point is that he was one of those people who wanted reparations for Africa. If you ask me now, would I think it's a good idea? No. No. And we can talk about it if you want to come and talk about it. But the idea of reparations is unnecessary. Oh, why? Did they not do this to us? Did they not do this to us? History is a very interesting subject. It's a very interesting subject. When people talk, I know this is a digression. I'm going to go back to this topic. When people talk about reparation, I always ask, where does it end? I think those who demand reparation, I think, this is me, and I may be wrong, by the way, but I think they come across as subservient to the people they are demanding it from. That's what I think. I think that it's good if the other person wants to pay you for something, like it happened with Japan. But this whole thing of let's go and demand something. Because, okay, so you ask the white because there is slavery. So the whites also ask the Barbary pirates from Africa because there was slavery. Then they ask the Moors because there was slavery. Then England goes to Rome because there was slavery. Then France goes to Rome. Germany goes to Rome because they also have to be paid. So Italy has to pay all of them. So Italy will have to maybe go to Greece. Then Greece will go where? Will go to Iran. Then Iran has to go to Iraq because that was the seat of Babylon. Then everybody has to go to Egypt. Like, where does it end? That's just my own. Like, because if you collect your own, this, if they want to collect their own too, should they? I mean, anyway, I just think that there's a better way of getting what's yours, and is what India has done. India has collected more reparations than anybody would ever imagine, without necessarily asking for reparations. See what they did. See how they structured and positioned their country to the point where you wanted to do IT stuff, you thought of India, and they got all your job. We can only understand reparations when we really understand that in our own terms. I don't even see any need for it, because every time I hear reparations, it makes me feel weak. And the truth of the matter is that I also think about the history of my own people. We also did things to people. I mean, we talk about some empires and we're very proud of them. Do you know what the empires did to other people as well? Listen, British did it to us. It's terrible, but guess what? It's because they have power. It's the way the world works. Somebody also did it to the British. It's the way of the world. And I may be sounding very harsh, but it's the truth. It's the way of the world. They will do it to you. Is the survival of the fittest. They will do it to you, you do it to others, and we did it to others. Let's make it very clear. We did it, and I'm proud of what we did, by the way. Although it was terrible, but I'm proud. Why am I proud? Because that's how the world worked at the time. At the time, it was rule or be ruled, conquer or be conquered. I mean, if you have the chance to be America today, would you not want to latch onto it? Well, minus the nonsense of the moral degradation. But when it comes to political power, of course, I would want Nigeria to be like that, or maybe even Yoruba land, be that powerful. You're going to throw your weight around a bit. People are complaining about China. China does not even doing military aggression. They are still complaining about them. The point I'm trying to make is that MKO did that, and we should be proud of what he did. But in 2025, I don't know if that is what we should be talking about today. To be honest, I think that we have to position ourselves in such a way that the West needs us, and they will pay. They will pay to the last farthing. They will pay for everything they've done, and the way to make them pay is by doing what India did and what China did. China did this in manufacturing. India did this in IT. They will pay you because you are providing something, but they don't know that what they are doing is even going to affect them. We can make them pay. But all this one of so somebody as slaves. Were there no white slaves? There were white slaves. Some of them were also taken by black people, by the way. Just saying. Or let's say by Africans, in case you don't want to hear that they're blacks. The Barbary pirates were Africans. They stole a lot of people in the Mediterranean. The Moors, we're very proud of the Moors. We say they're black, they're Moors, they're black. For 700 years, they colonized Spain. 700 years. Seven centuries of colonization of Spain. They were blacks. I prefer that story to this story of, oh, they could have slavery, we are slave, we are empty, we are reparations. It's just like your fathers also, dealt with some people, which I like, by the way, because it also makes it, at least you're not just looking at yourself and like, oh, we're just made to be at the lower rungs of the ladder. I like the fact that we have a history that says the Moors were there for 700 years. That makes sense to me. But they went through less than inhuman. My brother, my brother, my brother. Adekunle Adeyemo. Hey, hey, hey. Inhumanity did not begin with the white man. It's a human problem. Yes, I can say we can agree that there's a level of inhumanity that came with the transatlantic slave trade. But how come nobody complains about the trans-Saharan slave trade? Nobody complained about trans-Saharan slave trade. How come nobody talks about it? The castration that went on, the people that were taken to Arabia and Arabia Peninsula, many of the young men were thank you, Jerry. Many of the young men were castrated. Nobody talks about that one now. Everybody did it. China did it. Egypt did it. Igbo did it. Yoruba did it. White did it. White did it to whites. It's not about color. The word slave, I don't even know how it got here. Okay, we got here from reparation. The word slave is literally, the etymology of that word is Slav. You must have heard of the Slavic countries, the Baltic countries. You must have heard of Yugoslavia. Slav, that's where the word slave come from. For 400 years, the Ottoman Empire took as many slaves from that region as possible. They became so synonymous with slavery. They started calling, they used their name to name the concept of slavery. They were white and they were taken by the Ottoman, and the Ottomans are not black or white. Slavery, all those, and it's terrible, by the way, but it didn't happen just to black people. Black did it to blacks, white did it to white, Arab did it to Arabs, Asians did it to Asians, Asians did it to black did it to white did it to black. It's a human phenomenon. It's a terrible thing, but if you start thinking like, oh, it's about me, it's about black, they did it to us, what it does is that it makes people think less of themselves. Look at what happens when you have conversations about slavery with black Americans. They think slavery is American. That's what they think about it. How are you? Welcome. They think, welcome, bound. They think that the idea of leave that thing. I just came back from school. They think black didn't do it to other races though. Let me ask you a question. Movies, music, and TV. Are the most black, and are the Berbers, are they black? Do you consider those people from that side Africans? Are they black? Because when they do something good, we all say that we are together. When we now say this, we say they are not together because they did this in the Mediterranean, and they are black, and they're Africans. If you say they're not black, okay, but people will tell you that many black people are indigenous to those areas. The point is that humans do terrible things to human beings. Moors were a mix of races. Berbers are not black. They are Amazigh. Okay. As soon as you remember the fact that they did wonderful things, please make sure you don't say that they are black. So I don't say that they're Africans. So because today we say the Africans, we are proud of them when we talk about the greatness of the things they've done, but they become not black once we talk about the other things that they did. Did Oyo not do it to Dahomey, to form people? Are your people not black? Are form people not black? When you hear about King Gezo and what's the name of his son? That one that was fighting and was destroying places in Ilaro because of what Oyo did to his father. Okay, let's even live outside. Don't just say black and they're not from the Bantu. I don't care. See, Arrow, I don't. This place is not the place for that your Bantu thing that people are carrying about. I don't know who brought that thing on TikTok. Everybody just shouting Bantu, Bantu. As if you're just hearing the word for the first time. I'm not Bantu. I don't care about Bantu ideology. I don't really give to whatever about it. So please, just move that Bantu thing somewhere else. Don't just say black and they are not from the Bantu. Nobody cares. The point is that human beings, that's why I was very careful about the color. It's not about the color. It's not about color. I said they're Berbers. Yeah, I said they're Berbers. And I said they're Africans. But we always say that they are black when they do something good. Then we say they're not black. We remember that they are from North Africa when they do something bad. That's what I'm saying. So whether it's the Moors or the Berbers, but even amongst blacks, we also, Oyo Empire was not laughing with Egba. Oyo was not laughing with Dahomey. So even amongst blacks. And guess what happened to those in the north? Hausas they saw Shege. The whole point of what I'm trying to say basically is that blacks did it to blacks, white did it to whites, white did it to blacks, blacks did it to people of other races. But if you say Berbers are not blacks, but they're Africans, and if you always say the Moors are black, then don't say they are black. When people say they conquered Spain for 700 years, and everybody says yes, we are black, we are strong. Oh, they did this that was not good in them. Okay, oh, they're not blacks. They are from no. You have to choose one so that the thunder will know where to strike. Yeah, I was just joking, by the way. Hey, I don't want to go. Motiango. Sorry about that. Network low, say what is you. Now, for slave returns, have reparations low, Jackie network trigger, no trigger network. But we're back. All right. So let's go. Let's leave the reparation thing alone. But the point is that he did what he did, and proud. I'm happy. You're saying that in 2025, I don't think that's what we should be focused on. But the fact that he did it, I think, is something that should be celebrated. All right. Having said that, let's get back to the point. Okay, so we're talking about how Abiola was Abiola picked Baba Gada Kingibe, who was from the north, was from Borno, and that Tofa picked an Igbo man whose name was Sylvester Ugo, and that the reason Tofa won in three of four eastern states, sorry, the reason Tofa won in 3 of 4 eastern states was because his deputy was Igbo, and that is not really a problem. What makes it a problem is just people's assumption or people's weird take about the fact that they are not driven by ethnic considerations, despite the fact that every point of history points to the opposite, right? Like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong in giving Peter Obi 97%. What is wrong is after giving Peter Obi 97%, you now having the F13 to come talk to a Yoruba person telling him that he's tribal. That's when it becomes a problem, right? So vote Tofa because he has an Igbo person as vice president. It makes sense. Sincere. As a matter of fact, the reason politicians do what they do is because they want to win and they want to find a way to get to your emotions. So if Tofa was able to get to the emotions of Igbo people and they voted for him based on his choice of deputy president, then that makes sense. What I don't understand is the need to constantly tell people that we're not tribal, we're not tribal. It just doesn't make sense to me. All right, so I just wanted to make sure that we get to that point where we answer that question of why they voted who they voted. Now let's go back to the other book. Professor, welcome. I saw your kidney before my network carried me out. If you talk to a black American, for instance, about what's this man's name? About the Moors now, they'll be shouting, yes, we ruled the world. We was kings and queens. Just mention what something they did that's not too cool. You hear, they're not exactly black. But let's get back to the other book by Maximilian. So we're reading Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune. We stopped at how Babangida how he banned 23 presidential aspirants, and then and those of them who were Yoruba were Oris, and they were banned from further participation in the transition program. It was kings and yeah. All right. His decision virtually eliminated all Yoruba presidential candidates that met the Airways criteria and allowed new contenders to emerge. One of them was his close friend, Moshood Abiola. Abiola was not an Awoist, having kept out of politics since the early 1980s. Oh, even my own account is out too. I need to be in this place so that I want, if you can follow this new account, that would be appreciated. 1 second. So it says here, Abiola was not an Awoist, having kept out of politics since the early 1980s to consolidate his business empire. Abiola was enabled by the banning of so many presidential aspirants to emerge from the fringes to become a presidential candidate in 1993. Sorry. Abiola was not the best hope for Yoruba president. However, the Awoists distrusted and disliked him. Olabode, I just saw you. You're here. I tried bringing you up a couple of times the other time. I think it's the network. So please, if you want to come up, let me just send you an invite because I can't see again, shall. But just send an invite. Just okay. I think it's the network or something. Let me continue. However, the Awoists distrusted and disliked MKO. They regarded him as a traitor and a northern stooge. He had refused to join Awolowo's political party, even though he was Yoruba. Not only did he shun Awolowo's UPN party, but as a teenager, he had instead joined firstly the rival National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, which was led by an Igbo, then later the National Party of Nigeria, which governed Nigeria between 1979 and 1983. That's MPN, and which many Yorubas viewed as the party of the northern establishment. The Abiola-owned Concord Press newspapers sometimes criticized Awolowo. To many Yorubas, criticism of Awolowo by a fellow Yoruba was the highest form of sacrilege. A Yoruba informed me that Abiola was one of the most hated individuals of the pro-democracy movement. He was seen as an imperialist who had been involved in plotting coups. Many Yoruba, many Awoists never forgave Abiola for colluding with Northerners to deny Awolowo the presidency. How could the Awoists support a man who had devoted much of his career to blocking the aspirations of their revered leader? Abiola and Awolowo were not alike. Awolowo was trim, dapper, and austere. In contrast, Abiola was a big bear of a man who towered over everyone, being well over 6 feet tall, with huge hands, a deep guttural voice, and a flamboyance that made him appear larger than life. Awolowo was a socialist. Abiola was an ultra-capitalist billionaire who sat atop a vast corporate empire. How's that? No. It's not a Fonja. It's not a Fonja. It's just, well, Yoruba doesn't mean we have to belong to the same party now. Awolowo was a socialist. Abiola was an ultra-capitalist billionaire who sat atop a vast corporate empire. Awolowo resigned from a military government lest he make himself a hypocrite by giving legitimacy to a dictatorship. Abiola, on the other hand, actively supported military rulers and made his fortune through his friendships and deals with them. We already mentioned how IBB said they were friends and that they became very close over time. We have to mute this one. I think we have a bush baby here, Chidi. You are crying like a gbiri. Also can be bush baby. Let's continue. MKO Moshood Kashimawo Abiola MKO was born on August 24, 1937 to Salawa Adenekon Abiola father and Alaja Suliat Uraola Ayinke Abiola mother in the Bagura area of Abeokuta in southwestern Nigeria. He was the 23rd child of a 58-year-old father. All of his father's prior children had died in infancy. None lived for more than 6 months. His father named him Kashimawo. Let us wait and see if this one will live. Let me stop here and quickly address something. And I think, Prof, you are here. So let's talk about this ITT thing, because I think a lot of people get carried away by the song by Fela instead of, they've never read anything about ITT and what the contract entailed and how Abiola made money. And we go a lot by the narrative of, oh, ITT. Prof, are you there? Since you're up, I think we should just talk about it before I continue reading.
I'm here, yeah.
Good morning at your end. Ekabo. So I wanted you to say something about the ITT thing, the telecommunication project that Abela was involved in, and how the federal government was involved in it, the military government of Murtala Mohammed. So if you don't mind just talking about it for a bit, because I think a lot of people take the news from the song by Fela. Sure, I'm there.
Yeah, Mohammed. I mean, I don't think there's much to say. I think ITC is American. I also think they have some French connection. Company, mostly into telecommunication, especially supplying army signal equipment, right? And that was one of the things that brought Abiola into contact with a lot of those military guys. I think he worked in the company for a while, was the account, like the
Contact.
accountant, yeah. Then rose at a point to become the CEO of the organization, right? So he became the CEO. I think at a point, the Nigeria portion of it, he had some local part of the ownership in the local portion of it. But that brought him into contact with a lot of the military guys to supply most of the army and military signal equipment. That was where he made friends with the military and was able to influence that. I mean, it's like every other business person, right? You make friends, you do deals, you do, yeah, but I don't, do people think it's an illegal business or what? Is it?
The way they say international thief, like it's as though the ITT stands for international thief, or it was stealing money because Fela says it. So
No,
people
it
are
was
very quick to
a,
say, "Oh, ITT." It was a
no, it was a
legitimate
global,
business. Please continue.
it was a legitimate, it was a global company doing, I don't even know if they still operate again, right? But it was they had influence with the US Senate. Yeah, yeah, I mean, they did some bad shit, crazy things in the world. Not in it. I don't know about Nigeria, but in South America, I knew they were involved in the coup that brought what's this guy, the longest dictator of Chile. They were involved in that, so they had influence in the US Senate. But outside that, it was a legitimate business, like every other business. That's it, yeah.
Thank you very much. Someone said, was it a tender contract? So remember, we're talking about a military government. Military government. They were supplying military equipment. So it's not about tender or anything. If military
No,
says
but
we
there will
want
be
to do,
tender.
they
There will
do
be
it.
tender now.
Was it tender too?
There'll
But
definitely be
does
now.
but the military, they don't have to. They don't have. One second, please. The military don't have to be. Wait, oh,
Of,
do they
of course,
have to be?
during a military rule, you might not necessarily have to, right? But I'm sure army will have their own procurement. They will have their own procurement rules too.
They're tenders. They are always tenders,
Exactly. They will
regardless.
have their own
They are
procurement
always
rules
tenders.
too. Even if they bypass anything, exactly. But they must have procurement rules, right? So there will be tenders, there will be different things. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I think it also gives it a hello, Dr. Simi. It gives an air of legitimacy. So yeah, I agree. It gives a type of legitimacy if you go through all of that. But how about you want to say something? Um, okay, let me go back. When it comes, oh, are you there, Olabode?
Yes.
Thank you, optimistic farms. All right.
I just told
So
you,
you
no.
were
If I
uh-huh.
see what I want to say, me of oh, we're washing our dirty linen in public.
Maybe you should not say it.
No, because like the man who pointed to ITT was actually right. It was extremely right. ITT under Abiola was taxed with it was part of the company's tasked with improving our telecommunication structure, right?
Our or the military's own.
Our as a nation, our
Okay, the one I know is the
Nigeria.
military.
No, Nigeria.
Okay.
No, there was a telecoms contract like that they made a mess of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
whatever people think of Abiola, was it like please, Abiola is exactly what that guy was insinuating he was. You know, and people forget that it's this class that actually made Komayiwe fashionable.
Ṣé kìíní yẹn ṣó ní ṣé wọ́n kàn sọ ní àbó ṣẹlẹ̀ pé wọ́n ń yíwèé wọ́n fi ó sí kìíní kan kìíní kan.
Ó ṣẹlẹ̀ now. Hyperinflation
because
of
people say it.
contracts.
But Olabode wanting you way before Abiola.
Okay, so
máa
you
sọ̀rọ̀
can
yìí
talk
wèé
about
yẹn.
you can talk about people like you can go as far back as people like Kinongpe, Okotiebo, Boshejiwe, Belu, contracting and all that, and that was true, right? However, on the scale T, in Koti Abiola charge, bẹ́ẹ̀ pé unlimited port yẹn wà for what people afforded at a lower rate outside. Let me leave it like that, I beg. Let me leave it like that.
Olabode, what I disagree with is that we cannot call people out for job because they don't support you for Bafemi Awolowo. Honestly.
No.
And I'm guessing all these issue of always people are claiming now, honestly, is becoming a bit nauseating.
Okay, so no, we cannot.
I think that there are two different things, though.
There are two different things, right? So we might say to you, like Akinjide I consider the 12 to 13, let me not lie, a very brilliant move, right? Akinjide was a lawyer who sunk into the constitution at the time and really plugged out.
And it was MP.
Yeah.
It was MPN.
Yeah, like, but Abiola wasn't just that. Abiola.
But why would you blame Abiola for overinflating stuff? Are you not thinking of the corruption that could be there from the people that are doing the procurement? So for instance, if you want to buy that stuff, they tell you 5 naira lawyer code jail, but want you to pay 20 naira.
500 naira.
Then you have to write that, you have to, or 500 naira, but you have to do that in order to get the contract and get them settled.
That was what led to his level of wealth. So we're talking.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm saying that I cannot just blame him without. It's a structural issue. So if, for instance, you have a business, if you have a business, okay, I'm listening to you.
It's not blame as much as open up what he really was. It's not.
He was a businessman.
He was a businessman who took extreme advantage of.
That's what businessmen do.
It's not unique to that now. It's not unique.
That's what businessmen do. That's what businessmen do.
Yeah, ethical.
They have a loophole. They take advantage of it.
It's what it is.
I mean, Nigeria is. We have either we look at Nigeria as it is, or we want to, what we think it should be. And I don't think it was unique. Like I said, Konsho, it didn't even start with him. We know all the corruption that even happened during Gowon's time too. People praise Gowon. Yes, Gowon might not be the direct person, but he enabled a lot of that too. The nasty cement Amanda, all the nonsense that went on. Yeah. So again, I know a lot of people have issues with Abiola because he didn't support you for, and I'm a total advocate that all Yorubas do not need to support you for Bafemi Awolowo. We have to live with that. People will have different political. I don't see myself as an always. Do I like Chief Bafemi Awolowo? Absolutely. But I'm not someone that like ideology. I think it's baggages. You just tie yourself to a particular thing. I learned from him. I love some of it, things, not all of it. But again, when we look behind under the hood, at times things, we just don't need to talk about certain things. So people should stop calling Abiola Afonja because he didn't support Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He has a different ideology, belongs to a different party. Some of his actions again came back to bite him. So there's karma. Some of his actions came back to bite him. Right? But the same way I will say to obedience today, that we say you must vote for Obi, and I will fight them that people have the right to vote for anyone is the way I will fight people that feel because certain Yoruba
No,
politicians
yeah,
didn't support
Abiola had the right not to support Awolowo. Yes, he did.
Exactly.
He did.
Exactly.
But what played out in that, like especially the 79 scenario, was a charade, and that's why people really dislike everyone who was opposed to Awolowo, because they were seen as complicit in the charade. And then when you extend it to 83, it actually further solidifies why people were really, really hateful. Like, for instance, we're both from the same axis, right? At the time, you would have been saying I'm from Mundo. So the madness that happened in our axis with Omoboliowo and Ajasi, you know how expensive that became. So people like Abiola, who financed the party, right? Oversaw that party, that oversaw, the massive rigging, suppression of the people's voices. Like, to be honest, if they don't have a name in Yoruba land tomorrow, let's not kid. And considering the lack of vision in their camp, it's like I really see why people don't like those in the other camp, because practically they had nothing to offer, and they were against what would seem like Yoruba interest. Do you get what I mean?
I get what you're trying to. I get what you're trying to say. I get what you're trying to say, but again, we have to remember that this guy belongs to a different party, right? They belong to different parties. Both parties, it was 79 was terrible, and I think 83 was, I think, the worst. The Omoboriowo issue, which was sad. They shouldn't have, wresting power from, I think, both Ondo State and Oyo State, no, right? Ondo State, they did Omoboriowo. Oyo State, they tried to remove Ige too, right? In those
Now,
places.
Oluloyo.
Then Oluloyo won, right? So
Oluloyo was a
all those
governor
skills,
for
yeah, all
months.
those chaos that they caused me regrettable. My own point is just that, look, people,
We cannot hear you, Busuyi.
but me
No, I
back.
was saying that
No, no,
no,
not you.
Emini. I was saying that Ige was governor, but Lawyer was brought in.
Yeah, but Olunloyo won. Yeah, so Olunloyo won now in 83, right? So those are regrettable aspects of our history that you see people now saying, no, we will not allow certain. I get that. My own point is just that, look, Yoruba people, we're a different people. We are not like other regions. There's no way you will ever see 90% of Yoruba people supporting a politician. Like, no matter the love that people are professing for Chief Obafemi Awolowo today, these are retrospective. These things did not happen in his lifetime. His major opponents are Yoruba people. This
Yes.
deification are modern, recent creations.
No. It happened in his lifetime.
No, now
No,
you
no,
see.
no.
Hold on, Olapode.
It
Hold
happened, but
on.
it was not everyone.
It's not everywhere.
Against
Yeah.
them.
No,
If,
but
if,
For him.
hold on now. If you want to say there is deification, you probably will say the Ondo axis mostly, right? The people there revered him a lot.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but you will not say it's pan Yoruba.
Yeah, but
not
Oyo
in
doesn't like him
Ibadan.
till tomorrow. Now.
Exactly. Even during Alawa Kala's time,
They removed the
allow
bust.
recently they went to break down his bust in
Oyo
Ibadan.
doesn't like him till tomorrow. Titi Dollar.
Exactly, and they refused to replace it. So should we also
Some
say
Oyo, some
so
Oyo,
should we also say
Oyo.
Oyo people are Afonja? Should we call
Eh?
them that? No, should
They're
we call
not.
them that? Because their
You know why?
actions.
Because
They're not.
because the same
Our
Oyo
color be.
people, the same Oyo still push. They push Awolowo events every time in the same
Our
Oyo.
color be for Johnny.
Ìlọrin ló bí àfọ àbí Ìlọrin ló bí
Ọ̀yọ́
àtọ̀yọ́ ṣá Ọ̀yọ́ náà ní jàre
Anyways.
Ọ̀yọ́ náà ní jàre Ọ̀yọ́ ni. But someone asked a question earlier, if ITT still existed. So I went to check, and I discovered that it was broken into 3 companies in 1995. And one of those companies is focused on defense in the US and engineering. Another one is focused on insurance, and the other one is focused on manufacturing. And then later in 2011, it was broken down again. And there's industrial engineering, there's Xylem Incorporated Water Technology, and there's Excelis Incorporated that works in defense and aerospace. Was later acquired by Harris Corporation. So they still exist, but not the way they used to be back in the day. But I'll say this, yeah, that one of the beautiful things about Yoruba, and I think it's our advantage, is also our disadvantage. The fact that in other words, we don't all think in the same direction. So you are allowed to go against the grain. You're allowed to say no to popular opinion. You know, you might even look at how as great as it was and say, no, I don't agree. And like, it's fine. And it should be fine. It's just that, so there are 2 different things. It's one thing to not agree with him, the other thing to be against him. And I think the reason they're against Abiola the way they were against Abiola was because he was funding the other party. But then it made sense because also, and let me tell you why that thing is actually very, very serious for the average Yoruba person in the 70s and the 80s. The reason is that we have to remember that the UPN of the 70s is the UPN of the 70s is an iteration of Action Group, which itself is a metamorphose. What's the English word? Is the completion, so to speak, in the political space of Egbomo Dudua. So the idea basically is that if you were an Egbomo Dudua as a Yoruba person and you're expected to be there, you would naturally transition into AG and then transition into UPN. That must be the mindset that they had, to say anything against UPN would be against Yoruba, essentially. So anything is always essentially against Yoruba. But I don't think there's anything that stops anybody from going against Awo, just because it's politics. However, also, let me also mention the idea. I'm trying to summarize what we've discussed so far so we can get back to the book. When we talk about ITT and all of that, yes, you know, they might have inflated contracts and things like that. But the question is, it's the system. There are white people who took advantage of that. There are Igbo people who took advantage of that. There are also people who took advantage of that. Anybody who is doing business takes advantage of whatever. And I'm not saying it's a good system. I don't like the fact that people have to, you know, rub hands and grease hands and do all of those things. But the truth of the matter is that you are dealing with the people who don't really care for all the truancy. They just want you to, you know, put some money in their pockets. And so if, for instance, you have a contract, you know, that's going to cost such and such, they inflate it because they also want to get something. So the real issue is this, and this is the thing that makes me laugh about this whole idea of military being against nepotism and corruption. You know, I was reading somewhere, let me tell you this story. I was reading somewhere where someone was talking about the fact that the corruption that you saw with the military, that this was a military person saying that the military cannot take responsibility for that corruption because the military were taught by the civil servants, which is true. And like they didn't even know that that kind of thing could be done until the civil servants showed them how it could be done. So if you really think about it, you're talking about the military guys and the civil servants being able to change this entire structure to something that thrives on corruption. If a person who is in charge of a business gets in there and takes money out, he will not be able to do that if the system doesn't allow him to do that. But yes, we should have businessmen who are upright. We should have businessmen who are not given to bribery and corruption. But we should also remember the fact that, excuse me, ITT is not just about the song that Fela sang. There is a structure, there's a context to the events that happened. And it was a company, International Telecommunication and Telegraph. It was a company that had contracts, and they had to, as a matter of fact, Babangida talked about it way in 74, which is quite interesting because it was very young at the time. It was even, I'm talking about Abiola now, was very, very young in 1974. It was less than 40 when it got into all of that. So that's something really grand, I would say. But Esther is up, so we'd like to listen to Esther before we continue the reading. We're reading A Journey in Service by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida and also Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune by Max Leon. So we'll be going back to that book after Esther's submission. Hi, Esther. Hello, Esther. Can anyone hear me? Hello? Can anybody hear me? Shame Bomio. Okay, I see you. Esther, are you there to say something or should we move on? Okay, let me take you down. I'm actually surprised you came up, but Esther going once, twice. Thank you very much for coming up. I hope you're not doing what I think you're doing, because people usually do this when they want to report an account. This account has been reported enough. Let's stop reporting each other. God bless you as you do so. No. All right. Let's get back to it. Again, please, if you're just joining us, welcome to today's session. We're discussing NYC and June 12th. We talked about NYC already, so we're on June 12th now. We'll be discussing June 12th a bit, and then we'll get into other things, Abacha years and things like that. Our major book for this sessions would be Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune, but there are other books I will be introducing as we go along. There's a book by Green, and thanks, Prof, for a conversation that we had the other time. It's helping, right? So there's a book by Green that we'll also refer to as we move along. All right. So let's get back to the book. Yeah, also please, if you're just joining, please click on the heart icon beside Busuyi Oris so that way you can join the team, drop a heart me. It does help get the live on the FYP. And also please follow this new account, Busuyi Oris. I'll be going live on that account very soon, maybe today or tomorrow. I'll just leave a couple of days to talk about it so other people would know about it. This account has restrictions now due to the several reports in the heat of Biafra struggle. By the way, we're coming back to Biafra very soon because there's something I didn't talk about. But please just follow this account so we can, talk on the other that space. So let's go back to the book by Maximilian. So it says here, all of his fathers, talking about MQ Abiola, all of his father's prior children had died in infancy. None lived for more than 6 months. His father named him Kashima Wo. Let us wait and see. Let us wait and see if this one will live. He describes how he grew up poor and had to wake up early at 3 a.m. every day to walk 4 miles to collect and then sell firewood to support his family before going to school. He formed and played in a music band with self-made instruments called the Kashima Wo Orchestra. The band accepted payment of 5 shillings per show or else food, a plate of rice or 12 balls of amala. My father sent me to come and read books and not to change my religion. Despite being a Muslim, Abiola attended the Baptist Boys High School in Abeokuta with the subsequent head of state, General Obasanjo, and he read the Bible and passed Christian religious studies exams. He declined to convert to Christianity because my father sent me to come and read books and not to change my religion. When Abiola was 12 years old, his mother predicted that her son would one day become very rich, but unfortunately, I would not live to see it. She died 7 years later on December 10, 1956, the very day her son started his first job at Barclays Bank in Ibadan. Abiola moved to Glasgow, Scotland in 1960 after obtaining a scholarship to study at the University of Glasgow. He and his first wife, Simbiat Ni Atinuke, had their first two children, Kola and Deji, in Glasgow. Simbiat was from a wealthy family and later became the vice chairperson of several of Abiola's companies. Excuse me. The couple returned to Nigeria in the mid-1960s, and Abiola worked briefly for Guinness as a commercial manager, but did not stay there long after his father forbade his son to work in a brewery. He then started a career as an accountant and worked firstly at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Ruth, between 1966 and 1967. While working there, he met and struck a friendship with a young northern doctor called Dr. Sulaiman Wali. The two men's friendship would end tragically more than 30 years later. He then briefly worked for the international pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, before joining the telecommunications company, International Telephone and Telegraph, ITT, in 1968, as its finance controller in Lagos. ITT changed his life. Although Abiola had returned to a country in the midst of a civil war, the war presented him with an opportunity. The Nigerian military, then trying to quell a secessionist attempt by the Eastern region, approached ITT to buy radio communications equipment. Abiola met and befriended several army officers while selling radio systems to the army. His relationship with two of those officers would define his life. One of them was a young captain who commanded the 44th Infantry Battalion, nicknamed the Rangers, during the Civil War. His name was Ibrahim Babangida. By 1969, ITT's Nigerian subsidiary was in serious financial trouble. Things got so bad that when Abiola wrote a check for £500 on behalf of the company, it bounced. To make matters worse, the Nigerian army owed ITT £3.5 million, a huge sum of money in the 1960s, on a contract, and had refused to pay for over 3.5 years. A delegation of 12 senior ITT executives, including Abiola, visited the army colonel in charge of the contract to discuss the debt on April 4, 1969. For two or three successive days, they sat and waited for the colonel each day from 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. when he finished work, but he refused to see them. The following week, Abiola decided to make his own attempt to get the debt paid. Knowing that army officers were notoriously early risers, he went to the colonel's office at 7 a.m. When the colonel arrived for work and walked towards his office with a swagger stick in oh shoot, something broke. One second, please. 1 second, Ejo. All right. Nothing broke, thank God. Let me take the paragraph again. The following week, Abiola decided to make his own attempt to get the debt paid. Knowing that army officers were notoriously early risers, he went to the colonel's office at 7 a.m. When the colonel arrived for work and walked towards his office with his swagger stick in hand, he found Abiola standing in front of his office door. The colonel ignored Abiola's greetings and tried to brush him aside by telling him, "ITT man, leave this place." However, Abiola stood his ground and replied, "You are a debtor. You owe my company." An angry exchange of words ensued between the two men, and the colonel threatened to hit Abiola with his swagger stick. In another, perhaps embellished account, Abiola claimed that the colonel reached for his pistol. The shouting match attached the attention of the Chief of Army Staff, Brigadier Hassan Usman Katsina. Katsina called the two quarreling men into his office and asked Abiola whether he knew the identity of the colonel with whom he nearly came to blows. Abiola replied by asking whether the colonel knew who he was. That response enraged the colonel even further. Unbeknown to Abiola, the young colonel was a fearsome character and a legend in the army. He was the Army's Inspector of Signals. A senior member of the government said that the colonel was more feared than the combined influence of all the 12 state governors put together. He was awesomely dreaded by all that wore uniform at that time. He was extremely courageous and virtually a bulldozer on anything he set himself to prosecute, rightly or wrongly. He was the only officer in the Nigerian army who could openly disagree with the head of state and remind him that he was one of the people that sacrificed their lives to put him where he was. Abiola did not know any of this and still argued that the debt must be paid. However, the colonel blocked the payment and insisted that ITT had already made a 20% profit on the contract. The permanent secretary at the Ministry of Defense, Yusuf Gobir, mediated, and after more prolonged argument, the army agreed to pay what it owed. Abiola's recovery of the debt marked him out as a rising star in ITT. His near-suicidal courage in confronting the most intimidating officer in the entire Nigerian army also impressed the colonel. Abiola was ambitious, intelligent, had a sharp mind for making money, and could be ruthless. After recovering the debt, he demonstrated all of these attributes. Returning to the office with a check for the debt, Abiola found my white boss was misbehaving with the ladies and chasing them around drunk, probably. Sorry, 1 second. Tell him to stop. After recovering the debt, he demonstrated all of these attributes. Returning to the office with a check for the debt, Abiola found my white boss was misbehaving with the ladies and chasing them around, drunk probably. He got a photographer to take embarrassing photos of his boss cavorting about drunk and showed the photos to senior management in London. Abiola successfully demanded that his boss should be fired and that he should instead be appointed managing director of ITT's Nigerian office to replace him. As well as being paid a salary, Abiola asked ITT senior management to grant him shares in ITT. When they refused, Abiola decided to resign and formed his own company called Radio Communications Nigeria Limited, RCNL. Just before departing, Abiola informed ITT that RCNL had secured a lucrative £30 million contract and that he would involve ITT in it if they sold half of ITT's shares to him. Abiola admitted they sold the shares to me, but the truth was that we, Radio Communications, had not landed any £30 million contract, but it was too late for ITT to do anything about it. The shares became a gold mine. He bought his first plane in 1972 and took his elderly father for a test drive. They flew together from Lagos to Kano. His father died on July 9, 1978, aged 97. Let me just say something before we go on. There have been rumors that they gave him one check and told him to write any amount he wanted. So he just wrote it, and that's how he became rich. And then he must have heard this song as well. I think it's better to remember these things that we've discussed, just so we know exactly if somebody owns shares in ITT and all of those things, you may be able to tell exactly how he made his money, essentially. But let's continue. In 1974, the Federal Ministry of Communications invited telecom companies to bid for a contract to provide telephone exchanges throughout Nigeria. I think this is the one that everybody was talking about. The Director General of Communications, Theophilus Oluwole Akindele, and the Federal Commissioner for Communications disagreed over the contract bidding process. The commissioner was the young army officer with whom Abiola had nearly come to blows 5 years earlier. By now, he had been promoted to brigadier, and in Abiola's words, had become a close friend following the earlier misunderstanding. The disagreement between the commissioner and director general became public and was reported in national newspapers. The commissioner for communication won the power struggle, and the cabinet office sent Akindele on indefinite leave. In Akindele's absence, the Ministry of Communications awarded ITT a contract worth $138.5 million to provide telephone exchanges in 38 locations throughout Nigeria that would handle 150,000 telephone lines with the potential for more contracts worth over $1 billion. Guys, this was in 1974. Abiola became stupendously wealthy. He claimed to be Africa's richest man and had business interests in telecoms, shipping, banking, and publishing, and even launched a football team called Abiola Babes, which played in the first division of Nigeria's professional football league. He became famous for his huge acts of generosity and philanthropy, and regularly donated vast amounts of money for the construction of schools and hospitals around the country. In 1990 alone, he donated 1 million naira to every state university in Nigeria, several millions more to federal universities. He also gave scholarships to thousands of students. By 1992, he had been awarded almost 200 chieftaincy and honorary titles by over 60 different communities across Nigeria. However, his wealth was not without controversy. In 1980, the Washington Post published an article alleging that International Telephone and Telegraph Corporation has made questionable payments of millions of dollars beginning in 1975 and continuing into this year to gain huge telecommunications sales contracts in Nigeria, according to ISESE sources. The payments were made through ITT's subsidiary in Switzerland, where Swiss secrecy laws prevented US authorities from obtaining further records about the payments. The article also alleged that central to the Nigerian payments is a politically powerful businessman named Alhaji Chief MKO Abiola, who sources say has received large payments and has distributed some of the funds to Nigerian government officials. By this time, Abiola had become chairman of ITT's Nigerian subsidiary and was a member of the ruling National Party of Nigeria, NPN. ITT's General Counsel, Howard J. Ibel, denied that ITT had done anything illegal. But this is what the General Counsel said. All of the top management, including our board of directors, are familiar with the arrangements with Chief Abiola, and they've been a matter of some scrutiny and concern. We're watching them. We pay him a lot of money. We've gotten a big benefit out of the arrangement. We think we have done a very honest and honorable job in supplying equipment in Nigeria and have brought real value to the country. When the Washington Post tried to interview Abiola, an ITT spokesman told them that Abiola would be occupied during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Furthermore, after Ramadan, Abiola said he would be too busy to answer questions. The payments at issue started in 1975, the same year that the army officer who changed from being Abiola's enemy to his friend became Nigeria's head of state. The officer's name was Murtala Mohammed. By the way, when we read IBB's book, he mentioned how Murtala Mohammed sent him as a young captain to go interface with Abiola on some of these contracts. Abiola's closeness to the military and his alleged shady deals with them were so well known that legendary Afrobeat musician Fela Anikulapo Kuti released a 25-minute song entitled International Thief Thief, whose initial letters just happened to be the acronym of Abiola's company. Despite the controversy that followed him, Abiola was a greater political asset than the Awois initially realized. He did something that Awolowo could never do: penetrate and gain political loyalty in the North. During the 1959 federal election campaign, Awolowo flew in a helicopter over northern cities and dropped political leaflets. Although Awolowo thought this was a brilliant publicity stunt and political coup, Northerners were offended and perceived flying and overlooking emirs' palaces and residences where Muslim women lived in seclusion as utterly tactless violation of their privacy and culture. Abiola understood something that Awolowo never did. The North was not some backward enemy territory to be conquered and enlightened. Instead, it was a powerful political constituency whose support was mandatory for anyone aspiring to be political leadership of Nigeria. Let me just stop and say this. I disagree with Maximilian. Awolowo never looked at the North as a backward enemy territory to be conquered. Awolowo made the statement of his issue with the North in Dashiwamimo's when he was sentenced to prison by Justice Showamimo. It was not about the people being backward. It was about the leadership being feudal. So Maximilian is wrong here. The person who actually looked at the North as backward, this man called Ahmadu Bello, actually told us who the person is in his own book, My Life. I don't tell you who the person is, but he actually mentioned, or at least alluded to the person. So the idea that Awo was looking at them as backward is actually senseless. He was going there because he wanted to gain inroad amongst the people. If he had any problems with anybody in the north, it was with the leaders, and he always talked about the feudal system in the north. I mean, I think I read the speech, the one he gave at the trial. I read it earlier when he talked about the feudal system in the north and how they were bent on exporting that to all of Nigeria. But even at that, Awolowo still failed to capture the north. And that's why I said Tinubu failed where Tinubu succeeded where Awolowo failed. And apparently MK also succeeded where he failed by by getting into the north, working with the northern establishment. Not just about the people, but about the people who actually dictate what matters. You can't There are gatekeepers there, right? You may not like the gatekeepers, but you have to work with them. Anyway, nobody's ever perfect, so that's Awolowo's own mistake. So let's continue. While Awolowo saw the north, this guy is just saying his own stuff. Abiola actively fought out friendships and alliances with Northerners. Awolowo never became Nigeria's president, partly because he never overcame the real or imagined perception in the north that he was anti-northern tribalist. In contrast, Abiola befriended northern emirs, businessmen, and military officers. He was also the deputy leader of Nigeria's Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs. To his credit, Abiola realized that he was a political prodigal son in Yoruba land and tried to mend fences with the Awois. Prior to contesting the presidential election in 1993, he sought their support for his campaign. The Awois and Abiola crossed paths when the latter reached out and sought the support of the 83-year-old Awois, Adekunle Ajasin. Like most Awoists, the elderly Ajasin was skeptical about Abiola and regarded him as a stooge of the northern establishment. In March 1993, Abiola met Ajasin and other Awois at Ajasin's house in Owo, Ondo State. The meeting took place in circumstances akin to a PhD viva examination. The Awoist asked Abiola to explain why he wanted to be president and what policies he would implement if elected. After a thorough question and answer session, the Awoists were satisfied that Abiola's responses were Awoist in orientation. The Awoists reluctantly accepted that Abiola was the best hope for a Yoruba presidency. Significantly, Abiola also had the ears of the president. For the Awoists, it would have been utter madness to ignore the richest man in the continent who also happened to enjoy the luxury of being able to meet and speak with the president whenever he felt like it. Abiola was too good an opportunity to pass up. The political system, the military design for the incoming civilian government, reduced politics to a zero-sum game. Only two militarily created and financed parties, the Social Democratic Party, SDP, and the National Republican Convention, NRC, were eligible to contest the election. Abiola was the presidential candidate of the SDP. His even chance of becoming president was the best odds a Yoruba candidate had ever had. The Awois endorsed Abiola, but asked him to accept the Awolowo Creed, a list of Awolowo's and the Awois' political ideals. Abiola's endorsement of the creed allowed the Awois to conceptually reconcile themselves to their endorsement of a man that had been hostile to. It has been hostile to them, Chari, so it's not just one-sided. Anyway, on the basis that Abiola's political outlook had evolved to intertwine with theirs, that is the story of how the Awoists came to support a man they had previously distrusted. Abiola won the landmark election on June 12, 1993. His victory was so emphatic that he swept the polls in northern states such as Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna, Taraba, and Yobe. Abiola even defeated his rival, Bashir Tofa, a Kanuri Muslim, in Tofa's home state of Kano. It was the first time in Nigeria's history that a Southerner had won a presidential election. However, it being Nigeria, there had to be a twist in the tale. We'll go to chapter 2 now as we begin to rush. We'll be again tomorrow, 1 p.m. West African time, but we're not done yet for today. Chapter 2. The book is called Nigeria's Soldiers of Fortune by Max Siolon. On June 23, 1993, Babangida shockingly annulled the presidential election results and decided to cede power to Abiola. The annulment engulfed Nigeria in its worst political crisis since the Civil War, and its consequences hung like a curse over Nigeria for the next 5 years. Yorubas interpreted the annulment as a deliberate act by the northern-led military government to prevent a southerner from becoming president. A storm of protests, riots, and strikes rocked Nigeria, especially in Lagos. Angry youth set up the obligatory burning barricades and hurled rocks at the police. They robbed and stoned or waved at passing cars, depending on the assessment of the political affiliation of the car's occupants. The intensity of the protests frightened markets, shops, banks, and businesses into closing. In the absence of their proprietors, looters broke in and had a field day, stealing such items as cookers, fridges, and televisions, and carting them away in wheelbarrows and trolleys on their heads. Fearing that pogroms would soon follow, thousands of the Igbo ethnic group fled from northern and southwestern Nigeria back to their homeland in the southeast. Igbo nicknamed the flight home Oso Abiola. Abiola Escape. Let me quickly say something here. I always say there's a problem I have with certain narratives in Nigeria. It's the problem that is because the narratives are usually projections. I'm about to say something. See, this idea of calling people, what do they call that nonsense? Calling people cowards. There are some people in Nigeria that should not be saying it, right? Because at every small thing, you don't run away. There's no way you're the one calling people cowards, right? And it didn't happen once or twice or 3 times. It happened leaders, people. It's normal. You shouldn't be calling people cowards because your entire history is filled with acts of cowardice. But I didn't want to mention any group. Just thought I should say that. The circumstances of the annulment were opaque.
Busuyi,
Yeah?
let me quickly say something. This,
All right.
I think Max, as usual, is being short with the truth. In this case, the Igbos flee because they were expecting the Yorubas to be, to be genocided, to be
They were expecting the Yorubas
to be genocided. They are expecting the military to wipe out the Yorubas. That was what they were expecting, and they all flee to their hinterland, not because anything was targeted towards the Igbo. So they were, expecting them to be wiped out because this was a showdown. So they stayed apart. Like, it's not our fight. It's between the Yorubas and the Northerners, and they went back to their hinterland, right? Went to left Lagos, left everywhere, went back to their hinterland. It's not because of any pogroms against them. Nothing against them. They were openly saying it. A number of them were openly saying it. They were expecting the Yorubas to have been wiped out. They expect the military to do that. Right? So he's trying to make it look like, they were afraid of there was no pogroms. As a matter of fact, their leaders were in bed with these military guys at this point. Right? So as usual, you have to be careful when it comes to Maxilon and anything that has to do with Yoruba.
very, very.
He's an expert at twisting it. And that's why I also
Thank
think
you
people
very
should
much.
be
And
careful. I think you have a larger platform. I think you have a larger platform.
Okay.
People should be careful. There's this guy that I like that does video on TikTok, Washiri, and is putting out Mark's book as the best thing on Nigeria history. People have to be very,
Authentic
very
history.
careful.
Yes.
Maxilon is always biased when it comes to things about Yoruba. He is extremely biased. He's the only person that I know wrote about the June 12th issue and refused to talk about the actions of Otto Nzeribe, Daniel Kanu, and co. He omitted all of that like they didn't happen. So no matter who is pushing it, you have to be careful. He is not an objective person when it comes to Yoruba history. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing that up. If you notice also what I was reading, I will stop and tell you that that's his own opinion, and I will say, please let's power tap. The Amber Alert is here again. Let's power tap, please. I will stop and I will say, oh, that's his own opinion. I'm trying to correct it, and I thank you for doing that again. It's something I've noticed, and that's why I rarely read his book. I mean, there are many of his books like Oil, Poisons, and Violence, and it's not like his books are total waste. They have their own value. It's just that when you are reading it or when you are reading them, just have at the back of your mind the person who has written this and like a bias against Yoruba people from the way he writes, generally speaking. By the way, let me also say this: when it comes to things that affect Igbos, Marx always give excuses. He always make excuses for Igbos, which is one of the things. But you see, like we always say here, we don't only read books that come from those who agree with us. We also read books by people that may even have issues with us. And the reason is because even those who are your quote unquote enemies or haters or whatever, there may be something that you can gain from whatever it is that they've written, whether for your own benefit or to even counter whatever narrative that they have. So that's the reason I would read books by Forsyth or Chinachebe or even Maxilon. And yes, I know what you're talking about, Prof. The guy in question. I was watching a video where it was, praising Maxilon to the high heavens, but I just don't want to. I think it's bad for me not to even type his name because now you're going to do for him.
No, I just have to say it because our people can be in naively might want to, and also we also have to remember that Maxilon is not the guy's real name; it's a moniker.
Yep.
Right?
And he would never tell you where he's from.
Yeah, exactly. But we see what he does in his book. Let me give you an example. In his book, when he was talking about the first coup, and there's a section there where he talked about, was Agui Ironsi involved? And he was trying to justify that Ironsi was not involved. Then the book that you have also read, Gowon's book, where Gowon Gadagba wrote it there, that the actions of Humphrey, Henry Njoku and Ironsi, Hilary Njoku and Ironsi that day, that confirmed to him that they are involved. The remarks of Ironsi at the party too. What did Marx do? Marx neglected all of those places and he went to pick something that is not related. That, Gowon said Ironsi is a good man. And because Gowon said Ironsi is a good man, there's no way Ironsi will have been involved in the coup. So people have to be careful. There's a way, historians want us to remind us of things, and also historians can also make us forget things. Sometimes Marx always want to wipe out our memory about certain things that does not fit his own narrative. He does that a lot. In the same book, he was talking of Fajri, and in Fajri's, and he said, well, the military decided the counter coup guys actually have the plan to kill Fajri. That it was not Fajri that was brave. Fajri was not brave. This guy spent about 2 pages over an irrelevant.
Trying to downplay his bravery, just to maintain.
Downplay it, make fun of Yoruba
his bravery
people,
to maintain the cowardice Yoruba
people were publishing newspapers, praising Fajri and all of those. How is that necessary in an history book? 2 pages dedicated to that. Right. So, people, like I always say, we need to learn how to read. Right. And when you look at a lot of his reference, like when he's talking about the handing over to Ironsi, his reference, except if you've read the book, you won't know, but it's using Mbadiwe's account, right? While he neglected accounts of people like Shagari and Co. Right? There are places where he uses Freddie Forsyth's account, like when he was talking about Ironsi's unification. If you read that section and you read Freddie Forsyth, you will know he's quoting Forsyth verbatim. So we need to be careful about these books. Read it, but read far and wide, and don't as that guy was so enthusiastic about Maxiolon is the don't be like that, you know. Always read every book, even authors you like. Read it with some amount of skepticism. Thank you.
That's very, very important. Thank you very much for bringing that up. And yeah, it's very important to remember that. I think he's an Igbo man. That's what I think. Anybody who tells you that I'm Nigerian,
I
I'm
totally
Nigerian,
agree
forget
with
about
you.
my ethnic group. I think he's an Igbo man. Yeah.
Even in his recent
And then
book that
his real name, he would
we
never
did the
reveal.
reading. In his recent book, we did the reading on Twitter. It's still the same pattern. When the chapters about Yoruba and Hausa, there were lots of sarcasm, there were lots of things. But when he got to the chapter about Igbo, there was lots of reference, how great their culture is, and all of those things. And it was in the room anonymously sending my co-host long epistle to complain about some of the
It
comments we
was
are
in the room
making.
and he came to the place to your
Yeah, sending them to long epistle to complain about our comments that we are calling him out.
but it should have been better. By the way, why did he just come out with his own name? Let everybody know exactly who he is.
So an
He's saying
example,
something
he was
like
talking about
he's older
ethnic
than
people.
his father.
He was talking about
Okay.
ethnic people. He said ethnic people of the southeast Nigeria.
How?
Yeah, okay.
They
So
were never.
some of the things you said in his recent book that I just published some
Yeah.
2 or 3 months ago. So be careful with the guy.
Wait, is it that cloak or where? No.
The Forgotten Era.
The Forgotten Era. One day
Yeah.
we're going to read it here as well. We're going to read it here as one of these days. And I want us to do more reading actually as we have conversations to read because we will also be able to get in some of these books. But yeah, it's someone to be very careful of. All those I am Nigerian. The only thing I know about him is that he said he's older than his father because his father wasn't alive. And about 10,000 people from his father's place, celebrated him when he left the world. And but his father maintained the diary and wrote things and recorded stuff, and he had learned the importance of. I mean, that's you can't really tell where he's from. Anybody that hides himself like that on top, is most.
And his father
It's
fought
most
on the
likely an Igbo
Biafran
person.
side. He said that
Fought
word,
on the
but this
Biafran
is where
side.
he's from.
Fought on the Biafran. By the way, Prof, have you seen the interview with Philip Efyong's son, the fifth son, the doctor in the US? So while you're going to, you will hear me very soon. Prof, are you there? There's this fatherland interview that they had with him where we were talking about the unity of the Eastern region and all those things. I don't know if you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this fantastic.
I always skip over things that have Daily Ogun in it. I'm sorry, but let's go on.
I mean, I bought his book and, well, it is well. This is, I don't know. Okay, they said he got married to. Okay. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, but if you
Let me
get
just
married to
continue.
someone from a different side, is it only Yoruba men that get married from women from other side? Why is it only Yoruba men that lose their brain when they get married from women from other side? No, now you can't be blaming the women. Now we should blame the men.
No. I'm not even blaming the woman. I'm saying that there is this thing of not wanting to offend somebody because you are married to her, or not wanting to talk
And I don't
the
think
truth
he's
about the
not
ethnic
offended.
group.
He wants. I mean, from my reading of that guy, he wants a southern kind of alliance.
Yes, which is just ridiculous.
So the north is
Alliance
the enemy.
on what? Yes, every other person in the south is your friend. The north is the enemy.
Yeah. So no, not everybody is your friend. He believes the southwest and southeast. Of course, he's from southwest. His wife is from southeast. So two together. Then the south are irrelevant. So they should just be absorbed by the two. It doesn't really like So they should just be absorbed by the two, right? So and then face the north. So that's why I don't take most things. I mean, he wrote a very good book. His first book, no
The
doubt
fatherless people
about it. I also still have issues about it because
sorry, which one do you prefer? Fatherless people or the slave ship called Jesus?
No, I'm talking of his fatherless stuff, right?
I think it's a
Again,
good book,
there's an attempt to retrofit some things in there, create some unity between Yoruba and Igbo, which I think it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I don't take this is Harold Wilson interview serious, because there are a lot of, I can pick 10 errors in what Harold Wilson was saying, which doesn't make sense. It's just fitting, it's just confirmation bias as far as I'm concerned, right? And when you start introducing numerology into history, I find there's something, the Fulanis have something with the number 29.
29.
They do this, so that's that's not history again, right? So things like that, I don't take them serious. But
Seriously.
the bias is there. I know he's with IPOB. He gives lecture to IPOB. He's there. He's always in their conferences, and he's always against the conservative Yorubas because they didn't align with IPOB. You know.
That's just ridiculous. But yeah, thank you. I have that. Forgive me. I didn't like the slave ship called Jesus, but I kind of like the fatherless people. I think it's a good book. I've not finished reading it, but if it's Mukade, it's actually quite nice. So let's continue with our book. Again, this book, if you see us stopping and explaining, it's because the writer is not exactly somebody to be trusted on everything. He can be trusted on some things, but not everything, because of his penchant for downgrading Yoruba, which is not new, to be honest. The circumstances of the annulment were opaque. It stunned not only the public, but also senior members of the government. Even the vice president, Admiral Augustus Aigomo, was caught off guard. When Aigomo learned of the annulment, he phoned a senior security officer to exclaim, "What the hell is happening?" Even former military heads of state condemned the annulment. General Obasanjo held a forum at his farm in Ota, which was attended by another former military head of state, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, who said, "This military institution we know best has been desecrated, infiltrated, and perverted. Our colleagues are messing up the country and nobody can deny it." In late July, the National Defense and Security Council, NDSC, held a marathon meeting to debate the annulment and find a way out of the crisis. The meeting degenerated into a shouting match. Despite several days of discussion and hard bargaining, the key military stakeholders would not budge. They refused to accept Abiola as the president. Babangida said that the NDSC members never saw Abiola as somebody who is morally upright or fit, and they did not feel comfortable that this would be their commander-in-chief. Whether the annulment was Babangida's personal decision or something forced on him by other officers, he took the blame for it. Babangida had come to office 8 years earlier with a reputation as an enlightened and benevolent dictator. His bonhomie and charisma were legendary. A government official who worked for Babangida was almost eulogistic in his praise of his personal qualities. All who have come in close contact with him acknowledge his disarming charm, his geniality, and his warm friendliness. In him, we see a man agreeable, debonair, and warm-hearted, a man modest and in demeanor and humble in spirit, with a most winning smile and most affable manner. End of quote. In the public perception, the annulment transformed Babangida from Nigeria's most enlightened military dictator into its most reviled. The tumultuous wave of protest and anti-military hostility placed severe pressure on Babangida to resign. Yet, there was no word for him on whether he would keep his promise to leave power on August 27. Abiola too was feeling the pressure. After senior military officers advised him not to sleep at home and rumors spread that his life was in danger, Abiola flew to London on August 3. Although he said he traveled abroad to drum up international support and put pressure on the military, his journey bore the appearance of an escape. Again, nonsense. Nonsense. And the reason is because escape is actually what his people do. But let's just go on. Traveling abroad with civil agitation against the military was its most intense. Let me just keep it in. Traveling abroad when civil agitation against the military was at its most intense took the steam out of the struggle. It also played into the hands of civilian and military skeptics who doubted whether Abiola had the fortitude to be president. I never read anything like this back then. Anyway, let's continue. No one knew whether Babangida would stay or go until he addressed the National Assembly on his birthday on August 17. Babangida, quote, offered as my personal sacrifice to voluntarily step aside as the president and commander-in-chief, end of quote. He had decided to jump rather than be pushed. However, he still refused to cede power to Abiola. He would instead hand over power to a civilian-led interim national government on August 27. Thank you so much for the gift, Gorilla. Thank you. However, he made no announcement about who would lead the ING or about its other members or composition. Even the legal officers tasked with drafting the enabling legislation for the ING had no idea for whom they were drafting the governing instruments. Attorney General Clement Akpangbo, Professor Ben Wabweze, retired Supreme Court Judge Paul Nwokedi, Professor Oviageri, and the constitutional lawyer Dr. Epiphany Azinge of the University of Benin got on with their task despite being kept in the dark. The legal officers drafted the ING's enabling legislation over 5 consecutive days without knowing for whom it would be promulgated. When they completed the text of the draft decree, they left a blank space for the name of the ING's leader to be inserted. The relevant part read, "The head of the interim government shall be blank space." End of quote. The military asked former head of state General Obasanjo to lead the ING, but he declined. Yet Babangida continued with business as usual. He held a farewell military parade with his service chiefs on August 26, with only moments left before the end of his nearly 8-year reign. The entire nation was still in the dark about who would succeed him. Immediately after the farewell parade, Babangida returned to the council chambers inside the presidential villa to oversee the swearing-in ceremony of his successor. At 3 p.m. on August 26th, government officials swarmed into the council chambers, which was filled to capacity. Although they knew they were about to witness the swearing-in of the next head of state, most of the people inside the chambers had no idea who that person would be. Suddenly, the 57-year-old head of the Transition Council, Ernest Shonekon, was called forward to be sworn in as head of the ING by Chief Justice Mohammed Bello. Shonekon swore in the other members of the ING on the following day. Shonekon was like Abiola and Egba Yoruba from Abeokuta. He was a graduate of Church Missionary Society Grammar School in Lagos, Nigeria's oldest secondary school. He had a degree in law from the University of London and was also a graduate of Harvard Business School. Shonekon had a distinguished career as a businessman and joined the legal department of the United African Company, UAC, which still exists today as Unilever. He rose to become UAC's deputy legal advisor and later its chief executive. He headed the company at a time when it was the largest African-owned business in sub-Saharan Africa. After a successful business career, he entered politics in January 1993 when Babangida dissolved the federal cabinet and replaced it with a 31-member transitional council, which included only 2 serving military officers. Babangida appointed Shonekon to head the transitional council, which was to oversee the transition from military to civilian rule. One of Shonekon's colleagues on the council described him as a simple, modest, unostentatious man of no exceptional ability, yet one who always keeps his head as he waves his way unobtrusively but shrewdly to his set objectives in life. He is by any standard a solid personality. End of quote. Shortly after Shonekon's swearing-in ceremony, Babangida moved out of the presidential villa and departed in a convoy with his family and belongings for his hilltop mansion in his hometown of Mina in Niger State. He left without a farewell address to the military. It was a muted exit, a departure from the majestic and ostentatious ceremonies that usually accompanied Babangida's public appearances. That's the end of chapter 2. It's 6:02 p.m. I don't know if we maybe have conversations about this or we should just let me see how long this other one is. Okay. I think tomorrow we can perhaps have a conversation on the interim national government. Last 82 days. Maybe that would be a good place to start tomorrow. I hope that's okay. And then from here, we'll get into Abacha years and have some conversations about recent developments. So by extension, what we'll do is we'll be done with this, and then we may still go back to 50s or go back to the 60s or 70s, just cover as much ground as possible. All right, thank you very much for listening. I'm tempted to read this this interim national government today. 1 second, just give me a second. Let me see if we should do it. Okay, so let's do it this way. Let me read. Let's read it in the part about the interim national government. It's a bit long, but I think we're going to enjoy it. And then tomorrow we'll get into Abacha. I mean, we've heard that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, from clowns on Twitter saying, "Oh, he did fantastically well. It was a great." I mean, we were here when it was head of state. People were going missing, but people on Twitter now tell us it was the best. Anyway, it's Twitter. So let's read the chapter 3. It's called 82 Days. The ING era is often treated as a mere punctuation mark in Nigeria's history. Glossing over the ING obscures key events that influence. No, we can't even jump. No, we can't get to ING yet. No. Sorry. No, we're rushing. I'm rushing. Let's finish something with no. Let's not rush. We can take ING and Apache later. But let me just go back to IBB's book. Yeah, let's finish. Let's leave. We'll go back to Ineshunekon later. So let me read IBB's book. What's the title now? A Journey in Service. I'm going to read from page 270. It says here, I first met MKO Abiola in 1974 when, as a young commander of the Reconnaissance Regiment, I was sent by the Minister of Communications, Brigadier Murtala Mohammed, to evaluate the British Recall radio systems that Abiola wanted to sell to the military. Our relationship developed and we were always in touch. But by 1993, when he entered the race for the office of the president, he had become not only a closer personal friend, but also an immensely wealthy man of considerable national influence. So I was delighted that a man of his stature entered the race, just as I was glad that Bashir Tofa had thrown his cap in the ring. Although far less known to me than Abiola, Tofa, a Kanuri businessman who had made Kano his home, was also a personal friend. As it turned out, Abiola and Tofa won their presidential primaries for their different parties. I think I already read this. Let me just go to the other part where... Okay, yeah, so we talked about how the NRC candidate had an Igbo man as his vice president, which was why he won 3 out of 4 states. Let's not cap. And that's fine. Just that we don't like people lying to us. Please, let's power tap. We're almost done, but let's keep it going. Thank you very much. So please, let's do that. It's 40.5. Can get it to 50K. We'll be on a very strong footing. By early May 1993, this is page 271. By early May 1993, we all seemed ready for the June 12 presidential elections. Concerned about the proper validation of the elections, I directed the Center for Democratic Studies to assemble representatives of coordinated groups of professionals, such as labor unions. Thank you so much for liking it. Thank you so much. We are making progress. I think we just got 600 very fast now. Please don't stop, please. Thank you. I directed the center. This is Bangida speaking, by the way. I directed the Center for Democratic Studies to assemble representatives of coordinated groups of professionals, such as labor unions, civil society groups, women's groups, and human rights groups to monitor the elections. That directive led to what came to be known as the Nigerian Election Monitoring Group, an innovation that, to my surprise and delight, persisted to this day. I eventually authorized the monitoring group to be. This guy doesn't understand that nobody really cares about all of these things. You did not allow the person who won to take office. That's important. Nobody cares whether there is one election monitoring group. I mean, that's the reality of Nigeria, to be honest. When you T, right, I should stop reading the bias book. So that's not how it works, T. That's not how it works. Reading a bias book becomes a problem if you have not read any other book on that subject matter. But the truth is, if you really want to understand these different perspectives to stuff, you're going to read from biased and non-biased books. It's the way life works. I'm just seeing that comment. Can you imagine? You get a bit emotional. I get it. It's dangerous if you don't have any other source of information. But if you do have another source of information, then you're fine. You can literally, as you're reading it, you can critique it and say, okay, I'll pick this, I don't want this, I'll pick this, I don't want this. And then that's how we get ahead. All right. Where were we? But deep down inside me, this is IBB, I felt that there was still a need to reassure everyone, particularly the doubting Thomases at home and in the international community, including my immediate constituency, the military, that we were firmly committed to handing over power to an elected civilian winner of the June 12 elections. To do this, I opted barely weeks to June 12 to deliver a significant policy statement on May 17, 1993, at the first graduation ceremony of the National War College in Lagos. My National War College address had three components: a rebuttal of the claims that Babangida was working to succeed Babangida, a reaffirmation that the administration's commitment to, quote, handing over power to a democratically elected president was irrevocable, end of quote, and a firm reminder to my brother military officers that, quote, the international environment was no longer receptive to military rule, end of quote. Then I concluded with the following words, quote, with the countdown to the presidential elections in June 1993, all seems set for the conclusion of the political journey we commenced in 1986. I thought it was in 85. Okay, it took power in 85. By August 1993, this administration would be ready to hand over the baton of leadership to an elected president, end of quote. We were ready to go. In an attempt to further ensure that the elections were orderly, the NEC chairman, that's the NEC chairman, Professor Nwosu, made a nationwide broadcast reiterating the points that I had made in the other fora by reminding contestants of the rule of engagement and cautioning voters and candidates against electoral malpractices. Then, quite unexpectedly, a storm hit. From out of nowhere, on June 10, 2 days before the presidential elections, the same shadowy group, I don't know if Babangida can actually claim to not know anything about Othon Zeribe Olon. I don't know if he can actually expect us to believe that. I don't know. But anyway, he says here, from out of nowhere on June 10, 2 days before the presidential elections, the same shadowy group, ABN, that's Association for Better Nigeria, which had been campaigning for an extension of military rule, approached the Abuja High Court of Justice Basi Ikweme for an injunction to stop NEC from conducting the elections. Can anybody come up if maybe you have a better understanding? Do you really think these people are just doing what they are doing, or they're trying to get? Are they trying to get the military's favor, or are they being sponsored by the military? I'm talking about Othon Zeribe. So they went to the Abuja High Court of Justice Basi Ikweme for an injunction to stop NEC from conducting the elections. Unbeknown to me at that time, Justice Ikweme, who was relatively young at the bench, had worked in the chambers of Attorney General and Minister of Justice Clement Akpangbo. Strangely, Justice Ikweme, in the dead of night, in clear violation of Decree 13, which barred any court from interfering with NEC's conduct or scheduling of the elections, granted the ABN an injunction stopping NEC from conducting the June 12 elections. Please, let's part up. There was confusion everywhere. I quickly convened an emergency meeting of the NDSC for the next day to discuss the way forward. On Friday, June 11, as the NDSC meeting was going on, I learned that the Lagos High Court had ruled that NEC should go ahead with the elections. This man is actually thinking that we must be stupid. You didn't do anything. You were just ruling. You were having a meeting. They were just ruling. Babangida, in this book, paints a picture of himself as this very unassuming, gentle leader who rarely uses power and was just sitting down. They were just using it. Then they removed it. Then they put it back. They removed it. I was just having a meeting. They put it back. Okay. I think that's not true. The NDSC meeting on Friday, June 11, only hours after the scheduled elections, was one of the stormiest meetings I ever conducted as president. Strangely, the Attorney General and Justice Minister Akpangbo, who was the nation's chief law officer and who ought to know that the Justice Wemer court order violated an extant law and was tacitly supported it. It turned out by some of my topmost military officers advised that the elections be postponed in compliance with the Abuja court order. Professor Nwosu insisted, to the dismay of my top military colleagues, that he had enough powers under the law to proceed with the elections. The argument went on for hours in a tense atmosphere, peopled by some who wanted the elections postponed, among them the Chief of Defense Staff, General Sonny Abacha, Lieutenant General Joshua Dongoyaro, and a few service chiefs. But I had my views bottled inside me. Even before Professor Nwosu presented his compelling argument, I decided that the elections should proceed. Backed firmly by the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Saliu Ibrahim. As the arguments raged on, word reached me from the Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Oluwadeniji, that foreign embassies, notably the American embassy, were fidgety that we would cancel the elections. The details of a press statement by the Director of Information at the American Embassy, Mr. Michael O'Brien, were circulated during our meeting to the effect that the postponement of the elections would be unacceptable to the United States of America. Obviously, the Abuja court judgment triggered doubts in many minds. Although I remained committed to the June 12 elections, the U.S. intervention was problematic. It was clear that within the topmost hierarchy, who were also furious at the threats from the U.S., were persons who were opposed to the elections. But I stuck to my guns and said the polls had to go on. However, to assuage the egos of my military colleagues, I ordered the withdrawal of the U.S. accreditation to monitor the elections and the recall of the United States Information Services Officer, Mr. O'Brien, who signed the threatening press release. At that moment, I remember looking across the room and saying to Professor Nwosu, go ahead with the elections, go to your office, hold a world press conference and tell everyone the elections will be held tomorrow as planned. I also recall turning to the director of the Center for Democratic Studies, Professor Omoruyi, and telling him to inform his election monitors, foreign and local, that the elections were on. When I later received a call from the American ambassador, Mr. William Lacey Swing, we were both optimistic that the elections would go on as planned, and that was what happened. I don't want to talk a lot about ABN and Author therapy, but I think it's important to say that there's a pattern of sabotaging things that have to do with others from certain groups of people in Nigeria. It's a pattern, and I really hope it stops, but I'm not holding my breath. At that moment, I remember, okay, so I read about it. Let's just go on. On Saturday, June 12, 1993, the presidential elections took place as planned. To my surprise, the polls were not peaceful, but the polls were not just peaceful, but very peaceful indeed. Voting took place in all of the 110,000 polling stations in the country, and in keeping with the modified open ballot system as stipulated in Decree 13. Counting took place flawlessly in the open, followed almost simultaneously with an open collation that allowed for final results to be attained quickly. Why are they always against Yoruba? Walai. It's because, according to what Awo said about Zik, this is what Awo said about Zik. So let me say this. Let me say it this way. Let me not say it directly, because so directly, Oma stink. You have a goal of dominating a space, and then you have a group that is standing in your way. That group happens to be Yoruba. So that's why I flip flop lolly. Let's go back to this book. Using the giant board in front of its Abuja offices, next started as early as June 13, as stipulated by the electoral law, to display already released results from all 30 state headquarters of NEC before the resident electoral commissioners brought them to Abuja for final ratification. That process of public display of results, which had now covered 14 states, continued until June 14. And then on June 16, I'm going to read this slowly because I don't understand how Babangida keeps saying this. Let me just read this slowly. It says here, on June 16, without my knowledge or prior approval, NEC chairman, Professor Nwosu, announced the suspension of the June 12 election results until further notice. Let me quickly say something. You know, I used to say that as far as organizing the freest and fairest election is concerned, Nwosu did fantastically well. But I've seen some posts over the internet saying that he was the hero of June 12. He was not the hero of anything. He was not. What he did that was fantastic, and I'm going to, acknowledge it, was the fact that he conducted the freest and fairest election in Nigeria's history. That is enough. And it's great. It's a wonderful accomplishment, but it wasn't the hero of anything. That's one. Number two, I don't know if I believe IBB saying that he did not know that without his approval, the man just stopped counting. But he gave something as an excuse. I don't know if I believe the excuse, but let me read it. On June 16, without my knowledge or prior approval, NEC chairman Professor Nwosu announced the suspension of the June 12 election results until further notice. I knew instantly that certain fifth columnists were at work and that there was a need for extra care. And even after that suspension of the announcement of results, ABN, that's the same group around here, obtained another strange court order from Justice Saleh's court in Abuja, stopping the release of the results of the elections. Let me tell you something, Nigeria. Things have happened. And the things that have happened have shown very many traitors and very many terrible human beings. He didn't nullify the elections. He just stopped counting the results. FFP. He didn't nullify the election. He just stopped reading out. So I said counting. He stopped reading out the results. Right. But could he have done it without Maradona? I don't think so. I think IBB knew about it. But IBB now saying that ABN obtained another strange court order from Justice Saleh's court in Abuja, stopping the release of the results of the elections. In other words, and this man is acting like he didn't know. Everything was just happening. But my question is that in Nigeria's history, we've had several people from different places doing terrible things. One of the things that you probably don't want to hear is people from a particular place telling you that the worst things in this world belongs in other places but theirs. That gaslighting your woman being me, like, gets me angry, to be honest. The stoppage of the announcement of results led to a national stalemate and confusion, which was compounded, not surprisingly, by a flurry of protests from different sectors of society. Among them, the Campaign for Democracy, CD, different human rights organizations, other special interest groups, such as the Nigerian Bar Association, the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, Women in Nigeria, WIN, and the Association of Nigerian Authors, ANA. Almost overwhelmed by a looming national crisis of unimaginable dimension, I withdrew to my home in Mina to reflect and hold a series of meetings with various people within and outside the military on the situation, oblivious that something even more severe and sinister was about to happen. On the morning of June 23, I left Abuja for Katsina to commiserate with the Yaradua family over the death of their patriarch, Alhaji Musa Yaradua. Interestingly, he was supposed to be the one running for president on the ticket of SDP. The funeral had taken place, and as I got ready to leave, a report filtered to me that the June 12 elections had been annulled. Can you believe this, man? Do you believe this, man? Even more bizarre was the extent of the annulment, because it terminated all court proceedings regarding the June 12 elections, repealed all the decrees governing the transition, and even suspended NEC. Equally weird was the shabby way the statement was couched and made. Admiral Aigomi's press secretary, Nduka Irabo, had read out a terse, poorly worded statement from a scrap of paper, which bore neither the presidential seal nor the official letterhead of the government, annulling the June 12 presidential elections. I was alarmed and horrified. Yes, during the stalemate that followed the termination of the results announcement, the possibility of annulment that could lead to fresh elections was loosely broached in passing. But annulment was only a component of a series of other options. But to suddenly have an announcement made without my authority was, to put it mildly, alarming. I remember saying, quote, "These nefarious inside forces opposed to the elections have outflanked me," end of quote. I would later find out that the forces led by General Sani Abacha annulled the elections. There and then, I knew I was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. From then on, the June 12 elections took on a painful twist for which, as I will show later, I regrettably take responsibility. But wait, this is why the Abacha children came out to speak, because he cannot defend himself. Abacha said he's not the one that annulled it, it was Abacha. But let's continue. Following the annulment, the country was engulfed in one of its worst political crises ever. Like many of us in government, the political class was stunned. For the first time, civil and human rights organizations confronted the government with an unprecedented civil disobedience campaign. The Sit at Home campaign, organized by the Campaign for Democracy, led to the shutdown of shops and marketplaces and completely paralyzed Lagos and much of the southwest. Like I said earlier, these are the people that can use Sit at Home to do anything in Nigeria. If your place doesn't have economic advantage like that, or something you're contributing to national coffers, nobody would care so much. But it is what it is. The Nigerian Labour Congress was joined by the National Association of Nigerian Students in the protest. Within the military leadership, there was palpable outrage. The best of us, like Lieutenant General Saliu Ibrahim and Major General Ishola Williams, were alarmed, and Colonel Abubakar Dangiwa Umar threatened to resign. Even Admiral Aihomo, whose press secretary Irabo had announced the annulment, was horrified. The public vilified me. Instigated, among other things, by elements within the armed forces, the Nigerian press called me all kinds of names and described me as a power-drunk dictator who desperately wanted to cling to power. Tensions in the country were compounded by baseless conspiracy theories meant to justify the annulment. One such theory was that Abiola had penciled down a list of top military officers to be dismissed upon assuming office as president. Another conspiracy theory was that the government had let the June 12 elections go ahead in the knowledge, based on security reports, that Tofa would win. However, once Abiola won, the government sought a way to frustrate his mandate. These were spurious theories circulated by those opposed to an Abiola presidency. Some persons indeed expressed their reservations about an Abiola presidency before the elections. There were times when deep down inside me, even I feared that Abiola might not be an effective president. However, who cares if you feared or not feared? However, having allowed the process to go ahead in which Abiola appeared to have emerged victorious. Let me read that thing again. Baba in Jaron says, however, having allowed the process to go ahead in which Abiola appeared to have emerged victorious in an election deemed the freest and fairest in our country's history, I was committed to ensuring the results should stand. To do otherwise would amount to a subversion of the will of the Nigerian people. He did not appear to have emerged victorious. He emerged victorious, and that's it. But I also knew we were dealing with a delicate situation that could lead to national disintegration. Esther, you would have said the same nonsense just right now. You would have said the same thing to Buhari. But guess what? June 12th is Democracy Day in Nigeria now. What are you going to do about it? Meanwhile, if you guys are truly Nigerians, by the way, we are talking about, acknowledge what happened with Abiola. Why is it that the only people that are against anything like that are people from the East? Why are you people like this? It doesn't reduce you. It doesn't take anything from you. That the person who won is acknowledged as something. As a matter of fact, he has been acknowledged, just in case you don't know. He even got GCFR. That's the highest honors you can have in Nigeria, Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. He was given posthumously. So Legura Jisa is not dreaming. It has already happened. The payment thing is not necessary, to be honest. But as far as the title, knowing him as somebody who was JCFR and the winner of that election, it has already happened under Buhari. Stop getting high blood pressure over things that make your people look good. Girl. He isn't acknowledged as a former president. My point is that if he could get GCFR under Buhari, why would you say being acknowledged as president under? If somebody won the Bikini, what exactly is that? And why would it be a problem if Tinubu decides to acknowledge that, why would you say in his dreams? Does that acknowledgement affect your entire ethnicity? Does it make you guys less? Does the blessing of another people make you guys feel cursed? Because at this point, it's a national, it's an ethnic thing. Like, you guys can't stop it. You guys, you guys have to learn how another person's blessing does not mean you are cursed. One second. We're just one move away from that thing. There are three things that was supposed to be done for MKO. Two have already been done. Number one, he got his GCFR, although it's late. Number two, June 12 was it's not Democracy Day. Number three, they were being acknowledged as former president. I think it would be a bit difficult to be acknowledged as former president, to be honest, Sha, because he was never sworn in. But maybe they will swear him in absentia or posthumously or something. But even that, how does that affect your being? How does that affect Igbos? Like, how does it affect you? Is it because your people did not vote for him, or you don't have people like him in your entire ethnic group? Like, is that what is affecting you? Let's get back to this one. The military was factionalized into rival groups between those opposed to the transition to civil rule, particularly an Abiola presidency, and those who thought the military should keep its word and hand over to a democratically elected government. The military was awash with rumors of plots by those who wanted to depose me, to have Abiola installed, and those who wanted to take me out violently to ensure that the annulment stayed. There were rumors of a third group made up of sworn and implacable enemies of Abiola, a hardline faction who threatened that Abiola could only be president over the dead bodies. And if it meant taking me out violently to effect their threat, they were willing to do so. It was painful for me to discover later that apart from Abacha, some of my closest colleagues, particularly Lieutenant General, were knee-deep in the plot to eliminate me. The only reason those disparate forces did not strike against me was that it was feared, and rightly so, that since I still enjoyed the support of a sizable proportion of the armed forces, any attack on the government or my person would lead to a bloodbath. The polarization within the military was so fraught with danger that the best I could do in the circumstance was to project a united front as government in the face of the stiff opposition I faced as president. Although the annulment took all by surprise, as Commander-in-Chief, I took responsibility for it. In my speech on June 26, tepid and disingenuous as it may seem, I attempted to justify the annulment in the face of supposed nationwide widespread electoral malpractices during the elections. What mattered at that time to me as President and Commander-in-Chief was the unity of the army and my conviction that if the army was united, it could safeguard the country from disintegration. But guys, please, are we supposed to start feeling sorry for IBB with all of these things? I'm still trying to understand where we're going with this. After several brainstorming sessions with various groups, I contacted MK Abiola to find a way forward. At one of my several meetings with Abiola, arranged this time by some traditional leaders, I offered Abiola an interim position pending when we could resolve the situation. Not surprisingly, Abiola turned down my offer. How could anyone blame him? Since he was convinced that he had won Since he was convinced that he had won the elections that the annulment had denied him, it seemed overtly inappropriate to accept an interim arrangement. For him, it was a matter of once beaten, twice shy. At another meeting, this time a more private meeting of both families, I articulated our lives were in danger of being snuffed out by lurking forces that wished both of us ill. Unfortunately, Abiola turned his back on any form of rapprochement with me and embraced the gimmicks of deceitful friends who hid their real intentions from him. I read somewhere, I believe, in one of Abiola's newspapers, that Abiola thought that the moment these friends overthrew me, the election will be de-annulled and he will be installed as president by his coup plotting. Why is it that this man did not do anything in all of this thing? Everybody was doing something to him. He didn't do anything. I find it very difficult to believe General Babangida. So he said Abiola had friends who were going to overthrow him, and if he was overthrown, then Abiola would become president. And then he said, as it turned out, and he will be installed as president by his coup plotting friends. As it turned out, Abiola was advised by these same friends to leave the country to avoid death threats from fictitious military elements. Abiola's departure paved the way for his friends to consolidate their conspiratorial positions, eventually leading to another military takeover. Without question, one of my biggest headaches at this time was Sonny Abacha. I knew that Abacha was ambivalent about a return to civil rule. But I thought in retrospect now, naively, that he would support our transition to civilian rule. When things are expensive, it favors the Igbo, so we must vote Tinubu. Why? So let me just make this one. I'm tired of having to explain to a bunch of clowns. They're talking about Abacha, you're calling Igbo. You just center yourself in everything. When they insult you now, you'll be crying like Igbiri, like Bush baby. As I said earlier, Abacha and I had come a long way. We were good friends, and he had indeed been nice to me. As I've said elsewhere, he saved my life once and also risked his life to ensure that I took over in 1985. I could never forget those details, but it's also correct that he was a complex character. He was capable of bottling up a lot inside without giving a hint of where he was. And then suddenly the bottle bursts and we begin to see a different person. I obviously did not know everything about him. For instance, I was alarmed to discover that he and a handful of others mobilized negative opinions against me within the military, portraying me as a problem. That campaign was geared towards a violent military coup to remove me as president forcefully. But even more bizarre was my discovery of the loathing that Abacha had for the person of Abiola, whom I thought had a good relationship with him. Let's continue from here tomorrow, and then we'll get into the ING from here and with the other book, Nigeria Soldiers of Fortune, and then from there we'll get into Abacha years. And I think it's going to be a very, very fantastic session. We'll discuss, of course, what happened with the military. For many of us, and by the way, there's another book that I think this Abacha thing will lead us into, which is a book by the same Maxillion about the forgotten era. And so we're going to learn a lot about the military regimes in Nigeria, because I think a lot of people do not know enough about it. And that's why we have this new, should I say, renewed agitation or calls for, I mean, we had it a while back, military takeover, and because people assume that they're going to get something like Traore. By the way, something was happening in Niger, with the coup takeover, and these clowns on Twitter were saying, we should have the same thing in Nigeria. That government that was doing big boy, they're now begging Nigeria for fuel. They have energy issues right now in Niger. The same Nigeria that you all were insulting were the ones that will eventually have to save them. So we are big and we are blessed, and it's important for us to celebrate that. Having said that, tomorrow we're going to continue this conversation. We'll be looking at the end of how IBB left. So we read how IBB left power from Maxillion's.
Bluetooth mode.
Sorry.
Bluetooth connected.
Yorubas hate Igbos to the extent that they are willing to support bad governance. No, you hate yourself to the extent that you're not using your brain. You guys don't you know that you don't count? King Ibedu, you don't count. In Nigeria today, nobody did any votes from the Southeast to win. People need to tell you the truth, oh. No, I'm serious, King Ibedu. In Nigerian politics, the Southeast does not count. Do you not know that the South have taken over? Like, are people not telling you the truth? You put your eggs in one basket to the point where other people cannot bank on you. It's the truth. Look at what the South is doing. Look at the game they are playing in politics. You guys just carry everything, put it in one place. It's PDP, BDP, then OB, PDP, BDP, OB. It doesn't matter anymore. People can win without even thinking about the Southeast. That's what we have learned now. And it's a bad thing. And you'll be trying to fix it rather than going around telling me it's the government bad. The government is good. The country is getting better. It's just that where you're from, you guys have dark shades on. You can't see clearly. The country is literally getting better. By the way, do people talk about the good things happening in Nigeria? Is it just the evil things that they want to focus on? The revolution will happen in your family house and in your region. It should happen. Let the revolution start in the Southeast with your sit at home and unknown gunmen and ESN. Go and start the revolution there. As far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is moving in the right direction. If you don't see it, that's because you are blind. You cannot say one good thing that's happened in Nigeria in the last 3 years. Not one, in the last 2 years, not one. You are blind. Let me tell you something. There's a scripture in the book of Jeremiah. It talks about certain people who will not see good when it comes. It talks about a particular group of people. They will not see good when it comes. There are people whose trust is in man. Your trust is in Peter Obi, and the Bible says you will not see. Let me not curse you because it's like a curse. But you are sounding like those people. They will not see good when it comes. In other words, if opportunity comes your way, you will not see it. Tribalism has so blinded you that you're corrupting others. You don't have sense. Your parents are blinded by tribalism, and that's why they give it to someone like you. Where to use the word so blinded? I was still trying to help you by saying you are wearing dark shades. Actually, you are blind. You can't see. And if tribalism has blinded me, your stupidity has blinded you. What is happening? You guys literally have a Southeastern Development Commission. Let me tell you one. Maybe this will help you. Southeast Development Commission, everybody has Development Commission right now. We budget from the federal government, but you will not see it. Because until they give you a bag of rice, they have not done anything for you in this country. A bag of rice that was 100 and something thousand naira is about 60,000 naira now. Nothing good has happened. Meanwhile, forget about the rice. Talk about the implementation of things that can change your life and your family. Talk about local government autonomy that will soon kick off very, very soon because they are giving them months for the takeoff. Talk about the Development Commission. Talk about the tax reform being discussed. Talk about things that are being done. Talk about the fact that for the first time in a very long time, we don't have to worry about subsidy. Do you know how much petrol costs in Niger? It costs over 3,800 naira per liter. If it was before 2023, they would never have to pay that money. You know why? Because the subsidy that we were paying in Nigeria, the fuel was being taken to Niger and to Ghana, to Niger and to Benin Republic to sell. Nigeria will pay subsidy for fuel that people are taking out of Nigeria. No, let me just mute you because you are getting me annoyed. I hate it when people cannot see any good thing in their country. Like you guys are blinded by your stupidity. It's not even hate at this point. How can you live around so much opportunities and you don't see it? Is that not a curse? Are there things that are not happening very well? Of course, there are terrible things that are happening that should be better. Things should be fixed. But this idea that nothing good exists is like going to America and the only thing you see is school shootings. If you want to focus, anything you focus on gets magnified. If you focus on evil, that's the only thing you'll be seeing. And that's the reason people like this have no good news in their entire life. It's all the evil things, but that's the focus. You are looking for evil. Evil will always visit you. That's the fact of life. Abba. I saw the report this morning, yesterday I was surprised. 3,800 and something per liter. And the only reason, I'll say it again, the only reason they are paying that much is because the federal government stopped subsidy. They weren't paying that much because Nigeria would smuggle the fuel that they were collecting something on in Nigeria. Go and sell it in Nigeria, go and sell it in Benin Republic. Your government is literally subsidizing what other people are spending, and they remove it, you are crying like Igbere. Now you have a situation where Dangote is refining fuel. And let me tell you something, there will be no way for you to have a refinery in your country if you're having subsidy. How do you guarantee the person who is investing his money to start that business in your country that is going to make money after he has invested in it? How do you guarantee profitability for him? Now we've gone from 1,000 to 870. Some people are saying 815 from the depot. And hopefully it's going to crash more. You don't see any good thing. Like you look around Nigeria right now, there's nothing good. I mean, I think it's difficult in many instances, yes. There are people, for instance, who are having to struggle through stuff and all of that. Yes. And nobody will come here and say, oh, everybody's just fine, there are no issues. But to say nothing, everything's just bad, like, are you cursed? Don't worry, from tomorrow we'll use another mic. Your region is getting extra billions just for existing, not because you're adding anything. Maybe people should tell you this guy is the truth. You contribute the least and you complain the most. Like you are owed. You contribute the least, you complain the most, and nobody can talk because guess what? You have a right. Are you not? Don't you have freedom of speech? Are we not one Nigeria? Are you? Is the country good for you? It's good for me. And it's going to get better. But you, all you see is empty, empty. Even if they fill the glass and it's like 9/10, you still see 1/10 empty. It's empty, empty, empty. That's your vision. No matter how full the glass is. Come on. Be having conversations about you must bring that nonsense. Something that will make us talk about your ethnic group because if you never talk about you one day, you don't feel good. But the point is that how consequential are you in the political conversations in Nigeria? How consequential are you really? I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about politics. So you guys, if you get all this, they hate me, just carry your childishness out of this place. We're talking about as far as politics is concerned, you don't really matter. It's just the truth of the matter. When I talk about development, a lot more still has to be done by the government. A lot more. A lot more still has to be done by the government. A whole lot more. But to say nothing has been done is to just, celebrate mediocrity and just being blind. Do you know there are opportunities coming up right now? There are about 3 million. The training for IT, the goal is 3 million. I think they've done like a third of the number now. You go and tell those people that nothing has happened. The people that got student loan, you tell them nothing has happened. Southern Kaduna literally has the very first federal presence in terms of university in their region. You tell them nothing has happened. Until they give you bread and butter and something that you can eat, nothing is happening. The structures that will ensure that not only will you get bread one day, but you get it continually on a daily basis. That structure has been laid. You don't see it. And you went to school. What's the essence of your education? Things are crashing. I live in Nigeria. I don't live abroad, at least not at the moment. Prices are crashing in the market. Went to get some devices over the weekend. The woman was, the people selling was like, they had to change the price. They had to bring everything down because of the rises of Nigeria. They changed the price. Think about it. They changed the price. I went to buy some devices for our streaming. But somebody holed up in one village inside in the middle of nowhere is the one telling us about the retrogression of Nigeria. If you think Nigeria is retrogressing, to be honest, I think it's your home that's retrogressing, maybe even your region. And it's the truth. You don't see anything good. The Bible says the person will not see good when it's coming. They want fear to be one era. And I think it's possible. It's possible for the fear to crash even more. Look at what's happening. Who would have thought? The people that were fighting over 960, 1,000 naira fuel just a couple of months ago will tell you that they are now selling it at 815. And Dangote is now giving people money back. Giving all the people loaded earlier, giving I think 65 naira each on per liter. How come people don't see anything good in Nigeria? That's my question. How? It's not a perfect space. Definitely far from being perfect. There's still so much work that has to be done. But how come you cannot acknowledge something good in your country? And you say people hate you. Do you not know that you have hatred inside you? Like, no matter what people do, you don't see anything good in it. You are born with hatred. Meanwhile, continue like that, you will still not see good when it comes. It's the nature of life. But I hope you see good. And the only way you can see good is when you change your mind. It's a point of renewing your mind. And stop coming here with nonsense about how Nigeria is working. It's working. To keep working, to get better. The state governors will get better. They're putting out policies, infrastructure development, things from the federal government. It gets better. And if they're doing something that is really not good, you can speak about that thing. This is not working. Fix it. That's how sensible human beings talk. Not that you go everywhere shouting, hey, nothing is working. Nothing is working. As if you are cursed for things not to work for you. Maybe that's actually the issue. I don't care how much money you make. If you have that mindset, yeah, that's the Yoruba Bible. The money will develop wings and fly away. Because you don't have the capacity to hold on to it, because all you see is evil and negativity. That's a good way to end today's session. It's been wonderful being here. Thank you very much for being part of the conversation. All those who came up to speak, everyone in the comment section, thank you for liking the live, for sharing as well. Thanks for engaging.